against domestic violence, and we survivors have a voice. Please welcome our hosts, JT, Stephanie, and Jen.
Hey guys, JT here. I just wanted to do a quick introduction for this next episode in the Fortified Podcast. We are talking with my younger sister, Steph, and we're kind of going through kind of her relationship story in the next in the next couple episodes of the podcast. And we really didn't like intro this one. We just like literally started talking and didn't really do an intro because some of the banter we went back and forth in the beginning just kind of flowed really well into the conversation, which is why I'm doing an intro, because we didn't really do one. So this is we're gonna jump right into the beginning of the conversation where we start talking about Steph's relationships here. So once again, I want to thank you for listening to this, and we'll get right into the episode. Like, Steph, I know you had
where it all started.
Yeah, you had like 15 different relationships growing up.
I was chronically in relationships because I was searching for something that I wasn't going to find in a relationship. I couldn't be alone. I couldn't be alone with my thoughts. Like, I was constantly, like, growing up, like, I was constantly numbing things in one way or another once I learned how to do that. And I learned how to do that because of how I was raised. And I want to make it very clear here that I do not blame our parents for the relationships that I ended up in. Not at all. But there was some things in my environment that kind of molded me and shaped me to be somebody who was really vulnerable and naive and not able to clearly express her emotions in a healthy way. Because like growing up, like our parents, I don't think that we were in an abusive household or anything like that, not even remotely. We had, good parents. They also had their struggles. Like, there wasn't a lot of talk about emotions or how to deal with them. Like, what happens when I have negative emotions and I slip into anxiety or depression? They didn't know how to teach me to get out of that. So it was kind of like you're fed, you're doing well in school. Like, from the outside, you look fine. So you're fine, Steph. And like, I don't know if you guys remember that. Was Dad and Cheryl or Mom even like, did she teach you any kind of coping skills for like when you were feeling sad and stuff?
I think you have to remember that it was a different time back then. Like, people raised their kids differently back then. It wasn't like today. Today is all like lovey-dovey participation trophies for everything. Let's talk about our feelings. Whereas back then, when we were growing up, 80s and 90s, it wasn't that wasn't the culture. It was like, go out and play and do not come home until the streetlights
come on.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it wasn't like that. So you're right. I mean, it's not our parents' fault, that they didn't teach us about feelings and emotions and all that other, lovey-dovey hoopla stuff, because that just wasn't the culture of raising kids back then.
I don't even think it entered their minds as something that needed to happen.
So like, but I do understand, I do get, like, as you're saying, you maybe are having an emotional day or whatever, and some of those, like, you feel like you can't really talk about them with the parents because either those they get suppressed, like those emotions kind of get suppressed, like, oh, you're just this or you're just that, and you'll
like
be
minimized.
Just go have a cookie and go watch a soap opera and you'll be fine tomorrow. Like, I get that. Well, so I can understand where some of those, as you move forward in your decision-making process with relationships and things, like, where that potentially came from, because we didn't have that that strong, like, let's teach you about how to handle your emotions upbringing, back
Right.
then. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I totally understand that, and I have grace for them because I believe that they did the best they could with the information that they had, and it was a different time and stuff like that. But these things still ring true for me. I
Mhm.
found myself suppressing a lot of my emotions, and I think that I experience certain emotions like really heightened, which is why you could just look at me the wrong way and I'll start crying. Like I had like heightened emotions in certain aspects and I didn't know what to do with them. So I put them all into my relationships. I was like, okay, now I did this subconsciously. I was like, okay, if I can't do anything with these emotions, like I'm going to cling on to someone who will help me navigate them. And so I clinged on to, that's when all of my boyfriends, because I was a serial dater, I had boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend. I would cling to my boyfriend so much and become codependent with them. And that's an aspect that I see that may have derived from childhood. Again, not their fault, but you have
It
to,
just
I
is what
think
it
the
is.
nuance, yeah, this like little part of the story is important. Didn't really have a lot of help with my emotions. We grew up like, yes, we spent a lot of time outside. We were pretty much kicked outside until the street lights came on. So I didn't have as many like close interactions, like I don't want to say intimate, but like personal little conversations with our parents, like, oh hey, like how was your day? How are you doing? Like how are you really doing? Like what's in your head? What's on your heart? I don't remember ever having conversations like that. Um, and so it just added to me shoving my feelings down because I didn't feel like my feelings mattered. I felt like they were a burden, so I shoved them down, and you can only shove feelings down for so long before they pop up somewhere else. So, I guess we can
Steph,
get
wait.
into yeah.
I think though a very defining point, like factor of all of that, what you just said, and how it's different than even how John and I experienced growing up was okay, number one, you are several years younger than us. I think what,
Mhm.
6 years younger than John, 8 years younger than me.
Yeah.
Um, and when you were 12-ish, isn't that about the time that you guys moved to Pennsylvania?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
that was I think that that was a very difficult thing for you. I think you were, I don't know, from my perspective, you seemed like you were fine in Ohio, where
Mhm.
you started out, you grew up, you had your friends, our church. I feel like it was the move to Pennsylvania that really rocked your world, and I
It
think that
did.
that was almost like the start of you just not knowing what to do with your feelings. And
Mhm.
I think that our parents were probably some of where that came from, in them not really being super concerned about what you were going through. Was I remember talking to them. I was married and living in Wisconsin by this time. And I remember talking to them, and they had some pretty big struggles with that move. For many years, they had a hard time finding a church that they felt
Mhm.
just as at home
Yeah.
at,
Yep.
as the one that they moved away from. Our youngest sisters were very small, like what, 2, 3 years old.
Yeah.
They didn't have friends, they didn't have family. They lost it. They moved away from their community just
Yes.
as well. And I think it was hard for them to handle all of that on their own, much
Right.
less know how to handle the emotions of a pre-teenager and what
Yes.
you were going through. And I think that is and you know what? I find myself doing this as a parent sometimes too, just since because I have 5 that are separated by many years. And sometimes you just feel like, oh my goodness, I can't even handle my own stuff. Like, I just need you to go watch a movie, or I just need you to go
Yes.
play outside. I just need you to go be a happy kid and not have another thing for me to deal with. And
Hmm.
I just, that's probably what was going on. However, all of that still shaped you. It was involved in your shaping, and it just is what it is. And that is what
Yeah.
you were given to work with. So
Hmm.
I just think that that's a pretty formative point in contrast
Right.
with the way I grew up and the way John grew up, because it was different for us. We were in our
Yeah.
hometown, and,
You got to
for
keep your
most
community.
of our lives too, it was our biological parents together.
Hmm.
You were pretty young when they split up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It definitely added to just how I turned out. And that move to Pennsylvania was so difficult on me emotionally. And
mhm.
I couldn't really talk about it because I felt bad. Like, I felt bad going to my parents to talk about how sad I was about our move, because I knew it was hard
Yeah.
on them. Like, I was already picking up on, like, managing their emotions. I
Mhm.
knew it was hard for them, and so I didn't want to be a burden on them by bringing these things up. So I just kept everything
Yeah.
inside, and I
And
would
you
try
didn't
to
have us.
journal. No, and I didn't know. And I
Your
had
3
what
oldest older siblings you didn't have to turn to anymore. We were all grown
right,
up and moved out of the house, and then all of a
right.
sudden you're the big sister. You have
Yes,
to kind of be that person for
the
the younger
girls.
sisters,
Right.
right. That yeah, that was a
Yeah,
rough transition. So
it
you
was
started to
really
journal.
rough. So I started to
Sorry.
journal. You're good. I started to journal, and then I actually got into a not good. This is all leading up to this will make sense. I got into a crowd in Pennsylvania. We lived around the Quakertown area, and the first crowd that accepted me was not the best crowd. But I remember standing there in the lunchroom with my tray and just looking around and being like, first of all, I don't know anybody. I had giant glasses that people would make fun of me for. So I already felt so uncomfortable. And I was holding my tray, and this one girl runs up to me and she's like, "Hey, you can come sit with us." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." Like, and I never forgot those friends. Like, I stuck with them for the whole year that we lived there before we then again moved. So I didn't get into a good crowd. And that, like, when I was 13 years old, that's when I was first put around people who, there was somebody in our group that was pregnant in eighth grade. There
Oh
was
man.
somebody, most of my friends smoked cigarettes and they drank. And so that's when I was kind of introduced to that environment that then later on added to my addiction to alcohol. So I was 13, and then 14, I did have my first drink. And that just led into more. So this is kind of like the setup of how I got into uh I don't want to say it's how I got into them, but it's just important to know a little bit of background. So, came from a family that didn't really talk about emotions. I pushed my emotions down, and it was a family where um, dad was the ultimate authority. You do not question him. I wasn't. I don't want to say I wasn't allowed to ask questions, but I definitely got like
That
kind of
vibe.
snarky remarks like you don't need to know. Like, I said no, and no means no. So I was never able to ask questions and learn why we do things the way that we do. So that, not being able to ask questions, dad being that ultimate authority that I obeyed authority blindly, without knowing. I mean, I knew why. He was my dad. I loved to respect him, wanted to honor him and stuff like that, but I didn't always know the whys. So all of that kind of set me up to be a super codependent person in relationships. So um my first abusive relationship, started in 2009 with a guy who we'll call Chuck, because every time I think of the word Chuck, I think of the word upchuck, and it suits his behaviors perfectly back then.
So how old were you? How old were you in 2009?
Oh, math.
Math.
20. Stop saying math. And I don't know, 2022, 21, somewhere around there.
So that was your first.
I did-
No, you had relationships before that. This was right.
Oh,
This
Yeah,
yeah.
was
she said her first abusive one.
Oh,
Right.
got it.
So
Got
the guys before that, like I had Kenny as my high school sweetheart. Kenny was not abusive. And then I dated, I think one or two, no, maybe one other guy. I forget his name. It was like, it sounded something like Nick or Josh or something
Jesus.
like that. I don't
That
know.
relationship was
Yeah.
that memorable, huh?
Yeah. It lasted 3 months and he cheated on me with his ex-girlfriend. So that was a quick done. So I started dating Chuck in 2009, and I went after him because he, aside from being cute, he kind of had this like slight asshole personality, and I went after what people call the bad guys. So I liked my men to have a little sass to them, and I don't know what that was. That's probably something I need to work on in therapy. But I liked dating guys that were a little bit of an asshole, because if they're
Yeah,
too
well,
nice,
Yeah,
I'm
well,
like, ugh.
sass and all that could equate subconsciously to confidence.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. That's
The guy
true.
is really like, I ain't taking no from anybody, and that could be a confidence thing. I mean, or at least
Right.
come across as confidence in my experience and my education. That's more of lack of confidence thereof. But whatever, we can continue
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So, Ryan was nice, but Ryan also introduced me to like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde theory, where a guy or a person can be super nice 1 second, and then the very next second, it's like you're the most evil person in the world and they hate you. So he first introduced me to that. And then back in 2009, I obviously did not have any vocabulary for this. So I found myself very confused in that relationship. And that's a key marker of abuse, is when you're just confused. You can't quite put your finger on it. I'm like, okay, I'm not understanding how you can go from 0 to 60. Like there was this one story. We were getting ready to go out somewhere. We were in his house getting ready to go out somewhere. And he walked out of the room. Now his laptop was in the room with me. And he walked out of the room, and then he came back in the room. He was in a great mood before. He comes back in the room, goes to turn his laptop on, and the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, "What the F did you do to my computer?" And he like yelled it. And I was like so thrown off. I thought he was joking. I was like, what are you talking about? And he dead seriously like looked me straight in the eyes. Like he was mad and was like, "What the F did you do to my computer?" And I was like, I was very confused, right? Very confused. I'm like, "I didn't touch your computer. I'm so sorry." Like, so I started, the apologizing and stuff like that. My fight or flight response is generally fawn.
Freeze.
And fawn. Like, well, there's fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and I think they added another F.
My
So
gosh.
I would either freeze or fawn. So basically, I would just tell the person whatever they wanted to hear to get them back into that harmony that we were just in.
Uh-huh.
So I started doing that. It was a lot of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. Another thing that he would do is whenever he wanted to have a talk with me and he wanted to make sure that I was going to be listening the whole time, he would say, "Let's go for a drive." And he would just drive around the neighborhood for hours and not stop. And that was my first introduction to like being trapped. I couldn't go anywhere. I would consider like, "Oh, hey, let me just jump out of this car real quick," because I was so done with being yelled at. He would just yell about whatever, something that I did or didn't do. So he would drive really erratically too, and that scared me. So that added more to the confusion. And then another thing I noticed about him was I've always heard growing up that you watch how the man treats his mother because that's how he's going to treat you. Well,
I mean, that's legit advice for today too.
yeah. So I mean, now I always look at how they treat their mothers, but apparently I just didn't care. I was like, I'm in love. Everything's fine. He treated his mother horribly. Like, she was sick and he was living in her house to take care of her. Okay, right? But his taking care of her was like going and getting her groceries or something like that. But he was so verbally abusive towards her. Like, I remember one time they got into a fight about the laundry. She had left her laundry in the dryer and hadn't folded it yet. And he comes out and he starts screaming at her, Mom, what are you doing? You can't be lazy and leave your stuff in here, and just cursing at her, calling her a B word and all this stuff. And I'm like, after
My
he was
goodness.
done, yes. And like, after he was done and we would like get in the car, I would be like, Chuck, man, that was really harsh. And he'd be like, oh no, she's fine. She'll get over it. And I'm like, yes. So
My goodness. One of my
yeah.
boys talked to me like that. I think
Yeah.
wow.
What-
I could, no.
I don't get that. Like, you watch these TikToks and YouTube shorts and all that of like these kids just like and some of it could be staged, who knows, but like some of it looks really legit. But the fact that you would speak to your parents that way, and
Right.
yeah, it's like,
And she was sick on top of it. Like, you're supposed to be like, and she's letting you live in her house. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
was
he
dad
should have,
was there a dad, was his father involved at all? Is he gone, or
he was just out of the picture. He was non-existent. Chuck did not have a good relationship with his father, which is, I mean, probably why he turned out the way that he did. He was just a spoiled kid that his mother let live with her basically for free, and he just took advantage of it. Like, took advantage of her. He was not, if we were like another reason, or not another reason, another thing that he would do is whenever we would go out, I had to make sure that oh my goodness, I had to make sure that I wasn't talking to the opposite sex without him there. Like, if we were out, like at a bar, I was not allowed to talk to the opposite sex unless we were there, even to like go get drinks and stuff like that. So I remember one time he's like, hey, go get us a couple more drinks, right? So I go up to the bar and I end up talking to the bartender for maybe 60 seconds. It was not a long talk. And I was smiling and laughing. And he comes up right behind me and he's like, hey, babe, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I was just getting us drinks. He's like, well, you're taking a really long time. You're awfully chatty. And I knew right then and there, I was like,
You're
oh my
in
gosh, like,
trouble.
I'm so sorry. Like, yeah, I was like, no, here's our drinks. Like, I'm so sorry. I won't talk to anyone. So he was possessive, right? And I could feel all of these in my body. Like, my intuition was telling me, like, this is not
Run.
a good guy. Yeah, but what he would do is he would love bomb me then. So I got that intermittent reinforcement and those positive interactions with him. So I thought the man who was love bombing me was actually who Chuck was. And later on, once I had vocabulary for it, realized that that was just a mask that he put on to basically keep me coming back for more. So, I mean, like, he would buy me nice things. He would take me out to dinner. He would take me to his friends and be like, look how beautiful my girlfriend is. Isn't she beautiful? Just like saying all of these things. And then I would be like, all right, cool. We're cool. Like, as long as my relationship is cool, like, I'm fine. I put way too much emphasis on relationships. Like, I thought, like, in life, as long as me and my boyfriend at the time were good, then I was good. Then life was good. So, way codependent. He ended up, the way that the relationship ended, um, he was really close with his ex-girlfriend, and we'll call her Danny. Him and Danny, throughout our whole relationship, it was said in the beginning, Danny and I are best friends. We don't have any kind of feelings towards each other anymore. That's like dead and gone, but we're really close friends. And I was trying to be like the cool girlfriend. I was like, oh, that's totally fine with me. I trust you, whatever. Well, him and Danny used to hang out a lot. They would go to the mall together and just walk around. They would go to the movies. He would go to her house and just hang out. And it was like at least once a week that they would do this. And I was never invited. And for some reason, that wasn't a red flag for me. I was like, this is totally fine. I'm such a cool girlfriend that I let this happen. Well, one day I get a text message from her and she's like, we need to talk. And I'm like, my stomach drops. I'm like, come on, like, please don't be what I think it is. Before I get to that, Chuck, almost said his name. Chuck had come to me. This is a little bit before. So Chuck had come to me asking me for $400. And I was like, oh, what's going on? He's like, my friend Danny, she got herself in trouble with her boyfriend and she needs $400. And I asked what it was for. And it's what everyone thinks it was for. She found herself to be two people. She was pregnant with her boyfriend at the time's kid. And she did not want to be pregnant anymore. So she was asking Chuck for money and Chuck didn't have it. So he asked me and he was laying it on thick. He's like, I just feel so bad for her. She's going through a really hard time, like trying to guilt me into giving him money. And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry for what's going on with her, but like, I don't have that money to give to you. So anyways, then I get the text message a couple weeks later from Danny saying, I need to talk to you. So I have a break at work and I call her and I'm like, hey, what's going on? She's like, me and Chuck behind your back. I'm so sorry. We cheated. It's happened several times and stuff like that. And I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry, but I had to tell you. And I was like, okay, great. I have to process this. And then in the back of my mind, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, so what was that? I was like, if you don't mind me asking, he said that you needed $400 for something. And she goes, yeah, Steph, it was his. It wasn't my boyfriend's. I was only with him at the time. So he was trying to get me to pay for her becoming one person again. And that just that set me off. But whatever. So he tried that nonsense. And as soon as I was off the phone with her, I texted him and I was like, we need to talk. He calls me immediately. We meet out in the parking lot and I say, I'm done. This is done. This is over with. He tried saying everything to, he tried to say everything to get me to take him back, but I was like, no. So that is the first time. That is the first time I was actually able to say, like, no, I'm done with this relationship. I'm not going to tolerate this. So, that kind of wore down over time. My, not my patience, what word am I trying to think of?
Tolerance.
Yes, my tolerance.
Sympathy.
Yeah, my tolerance for that stuff was a little better than I actually didn't put up with a lot. Well, besides all of the stuff that he did, but I mean, anyways, so my tolerance was going down over time, and that's what these kind of relationships show. Chuck was the first introduction to an abusive relationship. I just didn't have the words behind it, but he was already priming me for getting into the other relationships.
So, okay, but that brings up a key point. Okay, so Chuck, couple things. The whole bar story, right? That, if we can do, and I'm sure there's books out there and all that, but we're trying to learn all these terms about how to identify abusive people and all that stuff. And, at some point, people that are in these abusive relationships are going to kind of put themselves out there again and take that risk. But man, it'd be nice just to have a bullet point list of hey, here's what confidence really looks like in a man. Like, it's not sassy. It's not this. It's not that. You know, here's what real confidence looks like. Because if you were dating a confident man and you went to the bar, you should be able to talk to any guy you want. And he's just got the confidence that, you know, he doesn't have to feel like that jealousy feeling. Now, sometimes role reverse this. You could have a really confident guy and the woman is just, you know, she's just trying to find a better thing. You know, she's got a good guy, but she's trying to step up her game. Like there is always that scenario, but from a confidence standpoint, like anybody who has that jealousy, why you talking to this dude like this? I mean, those are like signs of that's not being sassy or that's not being, you know, a strong male. That's a sign
An
of
insecurity.
somebody, a really insecure male who is masking it with aggression and with things like that. So if we'd like created a bullet point list of like, hey, if you're going to date a dude, like look for these key things from a confidence level so that you don't get trapped. But the other thing I'll say is that you lucked out because of that, what happened. Like he, you know, he obviously was fooling around with his ex-girlfriend, got her pregnant, and they're trying to go through you to pay for the termination of that pregnancy. And it's like, okay, that was a scenario that happened that was a pretty big one, gave you an excuse to get out. But if that scenario never happened, how far down the abuse road could that have gotten? You just happen to just luck out. I don't want to say luck out, but he, you know, obviously you were presented with a scenario that's like, okay, an idiot would stay with this guy and I'm not an idiot. So I'm just going to be done with this because cheating is cheating, whether, you know, there's no like putting a chocolate coating over that. So like, I think you lucked out in that specific instance in that specific relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely did. It stinks how it ended, but I'm glad that I was able to be like, okay, no, I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm going to move on. And it also helped that I wasn't working at the sports bar that we met at anymore. So I had changed jobs and I got a job working at a more fine dining restaurant as a bartender. So I was the lead bartender there. And that's when I met my healthy boyfriend. We'll call him Bruce. So
That's
Bruce, I'm not going to talk about him too long. Yeah. So it helped.
That was the one we all loved.
Yes.
Oh,
it helped
Bruce is
when,
the guy. He's that. Okay.
Yeah, Bruce.
We did like Bruce a lot.
Yeah, I know. So when Chuck did that to me, he cheated. I was already working at a different place and I like kind of had a crush developing on Bruce. He's very, very, very nice man. And
imagine Bruce as a very tall, very good looking, very fit, like very Russian guy. Like this was Bruce. We thought he was in the Russian mob, but he was the nicest guy and treated her like, oh, I did like Bruce. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it made it easy to leave that relationship because I already had my sights on somebody else because I'm a serial dater, right? So I always had my lookout for somebody that was better, which is a horrible thing to do. And I don't recommend doing that for anyone. So I got into a healthy relationship with Bruce. We dated for 2 years. So now we're up at 2012. He was fantastic, but he was, I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's almost like he was too nice, which sounds ridiculous.
It's what you said in the beginning.
Yes.
He's not a bad guy, so I'm bored.
Yes. It was almost like after 2 years, I was getting bored and like, it's okay to be bored in a relationship. Like it's ups and downs. Like the point is that you stick with that person and you love them no matter what. So I was just like, nope, this is boring to me. And right around then is when, what name do we come up with for the next one? Why am I blanking?
Chad?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was thinking of like 15 other names.
Yeah, because Chad was
So,
kind of in and out for a few years, wasn't he?
yes, this was the first episode of Chad. It was a short episode. So in 2012, I had a lot of depression and anxiety, and people at my bar started asking me, Steph, why don't you smile anymore? And the last time somebody asked me that, I was like, that's it. I'm done with this. I'm not just going to be stagnant in life. I'm going to decide to pick up and move to Florida during my early life, not like a midlife crisis, but my early life crisis.
Mind you,
So
this was the year that our mom passed away. To give a little
yes,
context into a big chunk of that depression.
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So yeah, in 2011, our mom passed away, and that just sent me on a tailspin downward. I was drinking heavily. I didn't care what I put in my body at that time. Anything was fair game, anything to numb the emotions that I was feeling. My breaking point was I was about to go into work that night. I got a text message from my other bartender asking, "Hey, are you coming in tonight?" Because I was already like 10 minutes late. And I texted back and I said, "No, I quit." It was a great job. I made good money there. It was stable. I had friends. It was such a good thing. And I just ended it with a text message, no conversation with anybody. And then my second text message was to Chad, who we had been friends since 2008. So it's now 2012. And I asked him, I was like, if I were to ask you to go anywhere in the world with me tonight, would you? And it was like maybe 30 seconds later, he answered back and said, absolutely. So I was like, I knew that he had a crush on me. I knew that he was like, I could date him. Like I could date him because we were really good friends. Before that, we got along. We had lots of inside jokes. We laughed together. We listened to the same kind of music. So I was like, perfect. I'm going to start dating Chad now. So I packed up my car. Yeah, I packed up my car with all the stuff that I could possibly fit in it. And I went and picked Chad up and we drove to Florida. And we stayed there for, I don't know, 2-3 months. How long do you think I was in there, John, in Florida?
It was like 2,
Not
3
long.
days. What are you talking about? Because
Yeah,
But wasn't
wasn't-
months?
No, it
No.
wasn't
I didn't
think
months
it was
because
months.
I remember. I think Jen texted
yeah.
me like I didn't know what was going on.
I had been blowing her phone up, and she finally either called or texted me back and told me what she
Yeah.
was doing. And I like freaked out. And then I remember calling John. You guys were either because this was around Thanksgiving. So John, were you guys already in Wisconsin visiting, or did you drive to Wisconsin because you were living in Michigan?
Yeah,
right?
we were living in Michigan.
Were you at my house already for Thanksgiving, or were you on your way, or was that never the plan and you specifically came to Wisconsin because of what was going on with Steph?
I don't the last recollected memory I have was we were back in Michigan, and I think we had the call with you or text with you like haven't heard from Steph or didn't know where Steph was, or that worry, and then you finally found her somewhere in Florida, and I'm like, okay. And we were in Michigan, so we were working at the church in Michigan, so it's not like we were barely scraping by money wise and whatever, and I'm just like, shoot, like I found out she was in Florida. I'm like, I need to go get her. Because I think we both agreed, like, somebody needs to go and get her. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
We knew she kind of fell off her rocker.
Yeah, she fell off her rocker.
I did,
This
for
was
sure.
super extreme. And I'm like, well, I'll figure out, a flight, like a one-way, like this was a big risk. Like here, I know she was I think it was the Pensacola area, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we know she's around Pensacola. So I'm like, okay, I'll get a cheap one-way flight there, and then I'll rent a car. And I need to make sure that the car rental place is like, I didn't need to drop the car off. I could just call them and be like, it's here, come pick it up. I'm done with it, right? So we got a cheap ticket down there one way, rented a car, and I still had no inkling
Plan.
where she was at, like no plan
Yeah.
whatsoever where she was at.
Yeah. I was like,
So
how
with
did you
some
find
social
me?
engineering, yeah. So this is before the term social engineering people really knew what social engineering was. But through some social engineering with
Old school.
Steph and stuff, I ended up pinpointing kind of about where they were, and then I ended up pinpointing kind of I pinpointed the hotel, and then they were at a restaurant or something across the street, or they were in the hotel at the time, and I knew I was in the right hotel because I saw her car, and I didn't know really what to expect other than to go, okay, come outside, I'm here. Guys.
Mhm. Yeah.
She comes outside, and yeah, we ended up, it was the first time I met Chad, and basically I don't really think I gave her a choice.
No.
Not
I
really.
think I
didn't.
just said,
No.
you're getting in the car, and we're
Get in the
driving,
car.
and we're
We're leaving.
driving, we're leaving, we're driving back to Michigan. And she's, well, what about Chad and all that? I'm like, okay, that's fine. Chad has family down here. I'm like, I'm gonna give Chad some money so he can, like,
Figure
stay
it
at the
out.
hotel, figure it out,
Right.
whatever. But he's got family down here. Have him call his family down here. Then he figure out how to get back. I didn't care about Chad. I'm like, this is, at this time, I'm just like, get in your car and we're driving back. And that's what we did.
Mhm.
Literally, I gave Chad some money. I was like, go call your uncle or whoever lived down here. I'm taking my sister back to Michigan. And he didn't really put up a fight. He's like, okay,
Yeah.
I think I don't know
Probably
why.
the whole
but
shock and awe of you
yeah, it's
just
just shock
showing
and
Yeah.
awe. Like, of course, first time meeting Big Brother, and I don't. So, yeah, and then we drove 17
It
hours
was like
back
20
to
hours. It was
Michi-
forever.
Yeah, it was a long time, and we drove
I
your
think
car
we
back to
stopped.
Michigan.
Yeah, we stopped and took a break overnight. We stayed at a hotel for a night because I could
Yeah,
not make it.
but you also didn't put up much of a fight. Like, you didn't try to argue with
No,
me to
because
stay.
I knew that I was not doing the right thing. Like, there was throughout my life, like whenever I did something I wasn't supposed to be doing, I always felt that, but I also was really good at shoving my feelings down. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Like, I knew I couldn't. I was getting ready to get a job down there and everything, and I just was like, this is crazy. I can't believe that I did this. And I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. So, like, as soon as you started talking about, you gave me this speech about peace and feeling peace about the choices that you make. And you asked me, you're like, Steph, do you feel at peace about this decision? And as soon as I said no, I was like, yeah, I just need to go with you, and we need to go from Florida to Michigan, and I need to get my head on straight. So I knew I basically just needed somebody to come alongside me and say, hold my hand and be like, we're not doing this. This isn't right. And I would have been like, okay, you're right. Let's do something else. So, yes. So when you came and got me, that was crazy how you found out where I was located. All I remember is sitting in the hotel room with Chad and getting a text message. And it was something like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And I was like, I don't know, watching a movie, whatever. And he's like, how about we go over to Pooley's? And Pooley's was the name of the restaurant or bar
Restaurant across
that
the
was
street.
right next to our hotel room. And I was like, I looked up at Chad and I was like, I think my brother's in the parking lot. And he's like, what do you mean he's in the parking lot? Like, how did he find us? And I was like, I don't know, man. He's like really good at stuff, and he doesn't play about me. So I was like, I'm pretty sure we're about to go downstairs and talk to my brother. And so he's like all like in the like room, all nervous. He's like, crap, what should I wear? What am I doing? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, it's gonna be fine. Whatever. Just get down. And then we went and had dinner and stuff like that. Yeah, but he was scared to meet you, and he was nervous, and he told me, he's like, I have a bad feeling about this. And I'm like, it's going to be fine. And I guess his bad feeling to him came true, right? Because in his mind, you stole me from him. Like,
Mhm.
you came
Yeah.
down and
Makes sense.
just stopped us stopped us from having our amazing life together down in Florida, away from my family and friends and everything I knew. He was just convinced.
I'm
So
sure
he
that's
was
what he thought.
also, yeah, he was also codependent. So that's when I moved to Michigan. We lived in Kalamazoo for a little bit. I got a job. I got all set up there and everything. And Chad and I continued to date long distance. It started to become a problem because he was still really immature, and I was picking up on that. And it was because he's 3 years younger than
Still?
me. Yes, he's still, yes, the immaturity. And so that started to like make me pull away from the relationship. And then he was also, he wasn't, I don't want to say he was abusive in that relationship, but he was definitely possessive. He didn't want me, if I was like telling him a story about, and it involved a guy being there, he would ask me 20 questions about the guy, like, what's the guy's name? Does he like you? Da 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 da. So he was
Mm.
possessive, and
I feel like
he
possession is
just,
almost like one of the seeds of abuse.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. It's definitely like he would say things like, "You are mine," and like I was like, "Oh, I'm yours." Like that's so cute. Now, if somebody said that to me, I'd be giving him the death stare. But yeah, so he just used a lot of language like that. So that relationship was kind of like a short little blurb. So after that was 2012, 2013. So like maybe a year we dated. And then I started talking to my ex-husband. What should we can I just say his real name
You
because he's
guys
okay
had
with this?
you guys had all
Yeah.
moved to Wisconsin though in that
Yeah.
process.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
because shortly after the Kalamazoo house, we moved back. I think we all moved together,
Yeah,
We
right?
you guys
did.
all moved together. Yep.
to back to Wisconsin, and yeah, Chad was no longer in the picture, and then then you started talking with Jonah.
Yeah. Okay. So we went from Florida to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and now in 2013 we are in Wisconsin. And so it was the summer of 2013 I started talking to Jonah, my ex-husband, and I had met Jonah back in 2005. He was a part of a church group that used to come to our college. And every week I would go to this church group and Jonah was there. So I got to know him there. We stayed friends, kept in touch throughout the years here and there. But all of a sudden he was talking to me again, and I was like on top of the world because I was like, okay, so I've dated some bad guys, right? But I've never dated a Christian before. And Jonah was a Christian.
Let's
And
try
I was
this
like,
out.
yes, I was like, this is perfect, God. I was like, please let Jonah keep talking to me. Um, please because if I can start dating Jonah, like, and we work out, like my life will be set. Like if I'm dating a Christian knows how to treat um his wife, and so we're going to be good. I just thought like as long as we're both Christians, we can do whatever. Well, we definitely learned that that is not the case. Like there are other things that go into a relationship. You have to actually like work at it. Um, and all during this time, I'm still drinking. So all during this time, even when, and this is important because it is a problem. Even when I was living in Florida, I was living in Michigan, I was living in Wisconsin, I was hiding bottles of stuff in my brother's house because I lived in my brother and Amanda's house. So I would hide bottles of vodka or tequila or whatever I could get my hands on. I would hide them in the basement. And I think it was I don't remember. One I hid it in the basement, and then another place I just found other places. Anyways, whatever. The point is, like, I was drinking this whole time, not every day, but on a weekly basis. And so that kind of led into my all sunshine and rainbows thinking, because I would just get a little buzz during the day and be like, oh my gosh, I would just like sit there and daydream and plan out my life. We're going to get married and we're going to have a bunch of kids and all this and whatever. So we're in 2013, and then I go to visit Jonah. He invites me to go visit his family in Pennsylvania. So we do that, and basically during that visit, we like fell head over heels, like in love, infatuation with each other, whatever you want to call it. But we were just like, okay, we're gonna get married, and life is just gonna be great. And
Mhm.
I do have to go potty. So can I go potty really quick? Well, I'm going to go potty. We can just raise
Jeez.
your hand.
Keep recording.
Mark. Yeah, I'm going potty.
We're not, that's the whole point of this new style is we don't
Yeah.
cut anything. We just let it flow
Yeah,
just like it is.
just
I
make
don't-
sure to mute your mic, Steph, so we don't hear
Yeah,
it
mute your
tinkling.
mic because it's not getting cut. Oh, Amanda texted me, like, I don't know if Steph knew this, but like, knew she was drinking. Like,
Yeah, I remember
again,
we talked
Amanda's,
about it.
Amanda's spidey senses were up. She knew it. So,
Mhm.
like, we would like search Steph's room and try to,
Yeah.
figure out where the stash was and things like that because we knew like what was going on. We weren't dumb.
Yeah. And you
Um,
found other stuff too that she was doing.
yeah, we found other stuff that she was doing. When she was living with us in Wisconsin, it was like living. Have you ever seen the movie Centennial Man? It's Robin Williams, or Bicentennial Man. Robin Williams is basically a robot that,
Mhm.
as he evolves as a robot, starts developing feelings. But in the beginning of the movie, he's just like a house robot that's like very dull and very like we felt like we were living with a robot. At
Mhm.
least I felt that because there was really no engagement. There was no there was a lot of avoidance. Steph was doing her stuff with the drinking and all that. And she didn't have a job. So I would come home and find her hula hooping out in the hula hooping out
In the driveway.
in the driveway and
I
things like
remember that.
that. So yeah, there was avoidance when we wanted to when we actually wanted to engage in help. That's when the
Yep.
avoidance really started. But she was, she didn't really hang out with us at all, or there was nothing. It was like living with a drone. It was living with a robot.
Yeah.
Just think of Robin Williams in the movie Bicentennial Man in the kind of the beginning of the movie. Like it's kind of living with like a
Yeah.
like she was just existed, but there was no engagement. And mind you, she had lived with us in Michigan and then moved to Wisconsin with us. And like, I didn't know what to do. Like we just Addison was
A baby. Wasn't she?
baby,
Yeah.
baby,
She was
baby,
little.
baby.
She
2
wasn't
years old,
walking yet.
maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, she wasn't walking
2.
yet.
I mean, she was 2 or 3. Yeah, she was young. So we were contending with having Addison,
Yeah.
like a new baby and stuff with,
Mhm.
relatively, because when we got married, Amanda and I got married, I got pregnant pretty darn quick. Like we didn't really get to, I don't want to say we didn't get to enjoy our marriage, but we got
You
to
didn't
work.
get to be just you two.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there wasn't us two. So we were just still trying to figure out life, as
Yeah.
a somewhat newly 2-3 year married couple and job changes and moving and all this other stuff that we were dealing with. So we didn't know what to do. And then
Mhm.
lo and behold, Steph's here and she's doing her thing and we're searching her room and trying to find all this stuff because we know what's going on in the back of our heads.
Yeah.
It's more Amanda than me.
Yeah.
And then she leaves and goes and visits with Jonah and then comes back home and just starts packing her car. I'm like, where are you
Yeah.
going? She's like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm moving to Pennsylvania to be with my husband, my love of my life. He's so sweet. I'm like, this is dumb. This is stupid.
I
Yeah.
know. You guys
Yeah.
warned me.
But
Yeah. Steph.
sometime,
Yeah.
you know,
Remember our Jimmy John's date? I was like,
Yes, I do.
just so you
I
know, marriage isn't rainbows and unicorns and
Right. And that's what I
Yeah.
thought it was. I thought because I had a Christian man, I was good and there was nobody that I was going to listen to that that was telling
Mhm.
me otherwise. Like, I was like, no, you guys don't understand. He's a Christian. Like, what? And he
And he's
played
a
on the worship
musician. Like,
band.
he's a
He was a
Christian
musician.
musician.
Yes.
His
I was
family
like,
is
this is
musicians, and we
set.
just sit around and we sing Jesus songs all day. And his
Yes.
parents like preach the Bible, and it's just so great. I
But he
remember you
was
It
your
saying
was
all of that.
great.
he was your
Yeah.
rescue.
Yes, he
Like,
was my rescue. He was my rescue, and I thought I was set for life. And his family, like going to his family's house was such a night and day difference from like being at our family's house, because they actually talked about God. Like in like most conversations, they would always bring it back to God. There was always worship music playing at their house. They constantly had people from the community in and out. And so it was like this culture shock to me in the best way possible. I was like, oh my gosh, your family is exactly what I want out of a marriage. Like, I want to be super involved in church and have this really strong Christian community because, right, like you guys got to experience that when we originally lived in Ohio when we were younger. I pretty much was moved right as I was getting into the youth group that you guys loved and
Mhm.
cherished so much. So we moved right
Yeah.
before that, or right. And I never got to experience that. So coming into this family, I was like, God is literally giving me everything that I've always wanted. I'll have a family that, you know, that cares about my emotions and actually asks me how I am and what's on my heart and how can they pray for me. I was in love with his family.
yeah,
And
now
it just seemed perfect.
that's the justification, right? Now looking back and now we're talking through this, like, so we in our guts, we're thinking this is not a good idea because, like, yeah, they've been friends, but they're just like going way too fast with this. She's
Yeah.
uprooting and moving. There's huge risk to that. But putting myself now in your shoes, experiencing what you've been experiencing the past 6, 7 months previously, like, okay, you find this, like, all of the justifications that you were convincing yourself of, like, if I were in your shoes, I'd probably be doing the same justifications. Like, there were no real warning signs. It was all lovey-dovey. It was all rainbows and unicorns. And, his mom and dad, his family, like, they were still, he didn't come from a broken home, as the term
Right. I
used to
hate
be
that.
a
I
lot
hate
get
that
thrown
term.
around. And, there was seemed to be stability, and he had a good head on his shoulders, and it seemed like his value, like, so I see the justification on why you're like, no, I'm doing this because this is, like, I don't want to pass this opportunity up. Right.
Yes. Yeah,
And it
exactly.
could have worked out great, like, and
It could have been good. Yeah.
it could have been really
Hmm.
good, but this was, you know, and I'm not saying if you would have stayed, things would have been different for the better. We don't know that.
Right.
But, like, I'm curious, like, when you left, like, because I remember Amanda's at work because I think she worked nights. I was home. You're packing the car, and I'm trying to convince you, and you just, like, flat out just like, no, I'm going. And I literally
Yeah.
watched you drive off. I'm like, whatever, she'll learn one way or another. But, you ended
Hmm.
up driving off, going to PA, and then I don't even know when the next time I heard from you was after that.
Yeah, it was probably
Yeah.
a while because I was in when I got back to Pennsylvania and I moved into his parents' house where he was also living. So we were both living in his parents' house. It was kind of like, again, that like just like culture shock. Like I was in a completely new environment and it just seemed like I was living at church, like the way that they just like walked through life together. And so I kind of just disappeared into that. And also, I disappeared because the drinking became really bad when I got to Pennsylvania because they were a household that always had alcohol. Um, so they would drink wine. They would sit outside on their back deck with a bonfire like almost every night and have wine or beer. And they were super generous with it. They'd be like, oh, sit down, make yourself a drink. You want another glass of wine? Go ahead, pour yourself a big one. And so I drank every single night there for like months. Like it was every night. And I was getting drunk often because I just liked the feeling of being drunk. So I was kind of in a little bubble, and the rest of the world didn't matter to me. I was just trying to enjoy my little bubble that I created, and I was just trying to stay. It's kind of like when you go on vacation and you don't want to come back home. It was like I was on vacation for a really long time, and I just completely threw myself into their family and getting to know them and stuff like that. And at this time and for years, I was terrible about communication. I would disappear often. Usually when I knew I was doing something wrong, I was too embarrassed and shamed to, or felt shameful, um, to contact, my family and stuff. So I did stay quiet for a long time then, and I just kind of threw myself fully into this relationship, and we became codependent pretty fast. But my the first red flag that I noticed and I ignored was actually on the plane at the airport, um, when I first visited Jonah. That I think it was August. Um, we were both in the airport and we were getting ready to take me to my gate or whatever. And so we're both standing there, and we were trying to figure something out, and I walked over to one of those machines that you can like self check out or whatever, or check in, do whatever, you get your gate boarding pass. So I didn't say anything, and I just walked over to one of those devices and I started messing with it. And then I hear him yell kind of harshly my name. And I like turned around and I went over to him. I was like, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "You just walked away from me." And I was like, "Wait, are you joking?" He's like, "You just walked away from me. I didn't know where you were." I was literally maybe like 10 to 15 feet away from him, and it wasn't crowded. Like you could see exactly where I was. And he was really upset that I had walked away from him, and that specifically I didn't tell him where I was going. And he was harsh to the point where I was like, "This is not who I thought you were." But I had a bad feeling, but I was just like, "No, maybe he's just stressed out because it's stressful being at airports, and he probably doesn't want me to leave, and so he's not." Yeah. And so I like came up with I could justify anything. Like I've been told that I am very good at justifying things, which isn't a good thing. It's not a good thing. So I just chalked it up to a combination of him not wanting me to leave and being at the airport and just being stressed out. And I was like, "Okay, that's fine." And then the next few weeks went on without anything like that. And so I was like, "Okay, that's totally fine. That was just a blurb in the timeline and it doesn't matter." Um, and I asked him about it though. I was like, "Why did you like kind of geek out over that?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He's like, "When I was growing up, my parents, they always wanted to know where we were. So it's just a habit. Like anytime somebody leaves the room, you let them know where you're going." And I was like, "Really interesting. I've literally never done that before. I don't like announce where I'm going when I leave a room." And he was like, "Yeah, no, it's just something that I'm used to." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So I just chalked it up to that. And so our relationship was good. Like that first year, 2013 going into 2014, was pretty good. There were little, I'll call them hiccups here and there where it's almost like his personality would change. And he was going into that like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And I first noticed it towards his family. So when we would be outside drinking every night in front of the bonfire, I noticed that him and his brother Luke would get into these like screaming matches for hours. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I didn't understand. And I noticed that Jonah, like I know Luke was being harsh too, but Jonah was being like harsh towards his brother. And I didn't understand that because I would never speak like that to either one of you. It didn't matter how mad I was. Um, I wouldn't speak like that to you. So that first those long kind of arguments first entered my life via him and his brother arguing and like drunk arguing. And then we got engaged really fast. So another hallmark of an abusive relationship is things move really fast. So it went from me being in Wisconsin to visiting Jonah to getting engaged to Jonah literally right away. He had a ring that his sister had given him or something. And so he took that ring off of his finger and he gave it to me and proposed to me in his parents' front yard during like the sunrise or something. And we were both a little tipsy. And so, so he brought me out and just asked me to marry him. And I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, you're supposed to ask my dad first. But I was like, nope, that's fine. So let's just push past that boundary. I was like, no, that's
and
fine.
like maybe
Absolutely.
purchase a ring yourself.
Yes, it was.
It's fine
it
that
was
you
very,
use the ring that your sister gave you. It's fine.
I mean, I
Yeah,
understand maybe
everything.
like if it was like, his grandma's ring or something like that. Like I've seen that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's
Right.
fine. But like, did his sister get engaged and then call it off, but kept the ring? And then do you have a
No.
It
do you
was
have
cursed.
a spoken for ring? Like that's the questions that come up in my brain. Like, what's the deal with the sister's ring?
Right.
That's an interesting story. I'd like to know.
Yeah. Right. So
It's probably the
yeah.
most boring part of the story. No, there's no
Probably.
story.
Yeah, it's not really. And like that ring meant a lot to him. His sister gave it to him when he kind of had his own Florida experience and went crazy. So I went crazy and moved to Florida. He went crazy around the same year, 2012, and he went to Philly. So that was his Florida that his parents had to get him out of, just like you got me out of Florida. So, so when his parents got him out of Philly and he came back home, his sister had purchased him that ring and it had a cross on it. So it meant a lot to him. It was his second chance kind of thing. Like, God is always with you. Here's this ring to remind you kind of thing. So that's the ring that he proposed with. And I wore it. It was too big for me. So I wore it on a necklace around my neck. And I remember this was still in August. It might have been September of 2013, that he proposed, and his parents knew right away. Like, they saw us the next day and I had his ring around my neck and they're like, you guys are engaged, aren't you? And we were like, yeah. And they were so excited. They weren't like, hey, maybe we should slow down a little bit. No, they were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm so glad you finally found your wife, Jonah, and you found your husband, Stephanie. Like, we're so happy for you and stuff like that. So I was like, this is great. Like, everyone's excited, And I just kind of wanted to live in that little excitement for a little bit, because I knew when I told my family, they were going to be like, what are you doing? So I don't even remember. I don't even remember when I told you guys, or if it was just one of those things where I kind of let you find out. Did I have a specific conversation with either of you? I don't remember.
At all.
No.
I don't remember at all.
No. It was just kind
Yeah,
of like,
I feel like it was a really quick thing though. Like,
it was.
I almost feel like I found out when I got your wedding invitation to your wedding in like Mexico or something. And I was like,
Yes.
yeah, that's going to happen. Thanks, Steph. Can't go to your wedding in Mexico with my 5 kids. Like,
I know. I wanted to
like 2
invite
weeks.
everyone.
in 2 weeks.
I know. That was the cheapest way, in my mind. That was the cheapest way we could do it.
Did we lose her?
Oh, Amanda said that, I don't know if she called or texted us saying, surprise, I'm getting married this weekend.
Yeah. I feel like I knew a little bit earlier than that, but I don't remember the phone call.
I don't either.
I don't remember. Because I think whenever she told me, it wasn't like a big deal to me, because I think she left me with the impression that they were getting engaged right away. So I almost was like, oh yeah, okay, so and
That's what it is.
I don't
Steph.
even remember getting a wedding invitation.
huh.
I just remember getting a text or a phone call because Amanda's like, yeah, I think she just said, surprise, we're getting married this weekend. And we're like, okay, sorry, can't be there.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Didn't
Yeah.
it have something to do the inexpensiveness of it didn't have something to do with like they were already taking a family vacation to Mexico or something like that, and you got some kind
Well,
of package and you were able to
so
just use it as the family vacation or something like that.
that's what we turned it into. It wasn't that they already had one planned. It was that their family often went on family vacations. So they're like, we're just going to take a vacation to Mexico, and everyone was planning to stay for a week, even with us there and stuff. So they were like, we'll just do our own thing over here. You guys can do your own thing, whatever. We'll have the ceremony and stuff, and then we'll basically go our separate ways. But that's what everybody was doing. They're like, we're just going to pretend we're going on vacation, and then we're having a wedding while we're there. Like, and it was all inclusive. So basically, I just had to, like, once we got my dress and we ordered like their like standard flowers or whatever packages that they had set up, um, they ordered that, and it just seemed to be cheaper than having a big wedding at home, because I knew if we had a big wedding at home, it was going to be tens of thousands of dollars. And our family didn't help at all. Like, they're not a family that believes in like the mother of the bride pays a certain amount or
The
whatever.
traditional things.
Yeah, they didn't put they weren't going to put anything towards it. So I knew that I was offering nothing, and his family was willing to pay for some of it. But so we tried to get it as cheap as possible, and destination wedding just made the most sense at the time. And then I was like, okay, well then only people who it's going to make our wedding count smaller, even though a whole bunch of their family came. So I was like, we could afford to do this. And I knew that most likely nobody was going to be able to come. So I was just kind of like chalking it up to, okay, we'll have this wedding in Mexico, and then we'll have a reception in Pennsylvania so everyone could come to that. So that's what we did. We, after we got back from Mexico and stuff, we had a reception and invited anybody who wasn't able to go on the destination wedding to that reception and stuff like that. So that was fun. Cheryl, my stepmom, did make a cake, so that was really nice. And yeah, so that was getting married. So we got married in July of 2014. And then we were still living with his parents this whole time. We didn't get our first apartment until after we got married. So we ended up moving in with two of our friends, two of our guy friends from church, into a 2-bedroom apartment. So we were freshly married and we had roommates. Yeah, so we lived there. We called it the tree house. We lived at the tree house for a while. And after we got married and we moved in and we were like in charge of our lives and we had to buy groceries and do all that stuff, that's when you're adding the stress to the relationship. And that's when I started noticing some abusive behaviors surface. And one of those times, the topic was money. And Jonah and I had gotten into an argument because I was discussing money and I wanted to know how much he wanted to budget per month to save.
The B word.
Yeah.
The B word and the S word. Save.
Budget and save. Yeah. So I was like, so how much money do you want to put towards our savings every month? And he looked at me like I had two heads and he was like, save? Save for what? Whenever I get my money, I spend it on whatever I want. And I thought he was joking. I was like, so yeah. So anyways,
That's
but
so
how much,
cute, hun?
yeah, how much do you want to save? And he's like, none. And I was like, well, like what happens when life happens? What happens when we need a car repair or we need this or we need that? He goes, well, we'll just ask my parents. And I was like, but we're married and we have our own family now. Like, what do you mean? And so we got into an argument over that. And our arguments went from maybe like 30 minutes to like 3 hours on average. And it was mostly just
Jeez.
him telling me how wrong I was and making me feel stupid. He wouldn't call me stupid, but he would use language that made me feel really
Yeah.
small and dumb, and like I should be so proud of myself to land a guy like that. You know, I better basically stay in my lane.
I think I threw up in my mouth right there. I remember those
Yeah.
talks.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
they were
remember all of
so
that.
long. And
Terrible.
throughout all of this, we were both still drinking. The boys that we lived with also drank. So we had a house filled with alcohol all the time. We had parties over. It was basically like living in a frat house.
Mm-hmm.
I loved my roommates. They were great people. But it was not an environment conducive to building a healthy marriage. So there would be fights about dishes being left everywhere. And I felt like I was constantly cleaning up after a bunch of boys. And that got
'Cause you were.
frustrating. I was, yeah. And I remember I all of a sudden had a lot of towels to do in laundry. And I was like, where are all of these towels coming from? Like, how many showers are we taking, kind of thing. And so I noticed that whenever Jonah would get out of the shower, he would dry himself off and then drop the towel on the ground and just leave it there. There were 3 towels at one point on the ground in our bathroom, and I was like, is he seriously just like leaving these here? So I decided to hide our extra towels. So I left one towel for each human to take a shower with that week. And the one day Jonah goes to get in the shower and he's like, where are all the towels? I can't find any of the towels. And I was like, well, I put them up because we were going through so many and I don't want to do all this laundry. And I was like, like, where did you learn to throw your towels on the ground after you're done showering? And he looked at me like I was dumb. He's like, well, what else do you do with them? You just use them. Like, you put them on the ground and then they get washed. And I'm like, okay, but like who does that?
Who
He's like,
washes
well,
them?
right. He's like, well, my mom always used to do that and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, but like, I'm not your mom. And so we got into an argument about how, to a certain degree, when a woman and a man leave their parents, the woman is supposed to take on the caretaking and nurturing and almost like a mother role, um, to her husband. You're supposed to take care of me and all that stuff. And I'm like, how have we never talked about this
Oh my
in the year that we were
goodness,
together?
gosh.
So it was just, he thought that I was supposed to be kind of like a mother towards him.
That
And
is so, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but that is like so far from the truth and what a wife should be. I'm sorry, but by the time you get married, you ought to be a grown enough man that you don't need a mother to
right,
mother you like that. Like, you still go to your mom, you still have a relationship with your mom and you still honor her. And I'm sure, yeah, go to her for advice and whatever, but like, you don't need nobody to mother you anymore. At
Well,
least that's
mhm.
not what you're supposed no, don't
What do you
well
mean,
me.
well?
I'm sorry,
No,
but I
no.
don't need to be a
Oh,
mother to
wow.
my
I'm getting attacked when I just
Get
said the word
him,
will.
get him.
You said well.
Seriously.
I was going to say,
relax.
well, the lesson here, kids, is when you're dating somebody that you are thinking about, this could be the one, make sure he's lived out on his own for a little bit and not
Yes.
still living with his parents. That's what I
Yes.
was going to say. So y'all with your you got your guns loaded, pointed at me, ready to
Yeah.
shoot me. And all I did was just open my mouth.
Sorry, we're a little sensitive about that, apparently.
Yes.
The other
Yes.
thing, if you're a man and you want to know if you have the right woman, you look at her and you go, woman, go make me a sandwich. Now, if her response is, sure, hun, no problem, I don't know. But if she turns back in and go make your own stinking sandwich, you probably got to keep her.
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
I would
that's what
say
you have to do.
there's somewhere in between. Like
Right.
there's way too
Right.
black and white
In all
there.
seriousness, like there is a somewhere in between, because I have to say that like my wife, okay, I kind of got the best of both worlds and I lucked out with her, right? So she does what she needs to do around the house, like not that because she's required to, but she does laundry, she'll do dishes and all this
Whatever,
other stuff.
John. I've seen your chore list for her.
I get it, okay?
My
But
gosh.
she also doesn't do that because she feels she
Joking.
has to. She doesn't do that because like I make her or she feels she has to. She does it because she wants to, right? There's no expectation on my end that dinner has to be ready. There's no expectation on my end that the laundry has to be done. It just happens to be done all the time. But there's not an expectation on my end. And I'm being very careful with my words because, oh my gosh, I'm treading on such a thin line right now on
Yep.
expectation versus like all this. But it's a balance and it helps to talk about it. But if you try to talk to your significant other about like, pick up your stinking towels off the bathroom, and the response is, well, that's how my mother did it, so that's how I expect you to do it. Pretty sure that's a red flag, but it's already too late for you because you already married the dude. So
Yes. Yeah.
do your
Yeah.
homework,
And
kids.
yes. Yeah. Do your homework, get to know each other before you even get engaged. I do not recommend getting engaged within a few months of talking. Definitely not. We should have taken our time and gotten to know each other and all of that jazz. But oh man, I was gonna tell something, but it completely just left my head.
Well, because now you're
Um,
stuck. You're stuck having arguments and stuff now about stupid things like towels, and which turns
Yeah.
into, well,
yes.
you need to be a homemaker because that's what my mother was. My mother was okay with picking up towels after everybody and doing laundry and cooking, which is, I'm not saying that's bad or that his mother was like wrong by living that lifestyle, living that way of thinking.
Yeah.
Some women, that's what they want. Like their whole life goal is to just be a housewife. That's all they want to do, and that makes them
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
They like doing the laundry. They like cleaning up after the kids. Like that's what they like to do. But I think there's this expectation, like a lot of men have this have the expectation of you should be doing that whether you like it or not, because that is
Yeah,
your
because
Yeah.
you're female, and when you become a married female, you're a wife, and when you become like this is expected.
Yeah.
I'm telling, like, that's always been my dream job. I always wanted to stay home and just take care of the homestead, take care of the kids, the
Yeah.
home, like do like that. Literally is my dream job to this day.
Mhm.
Never played out that way, but there is nothing wrong with that. We are not here saying that there's
Yeah.
anything wrong with that
No,
at all
absolutely not.
whatsoever. But there's a difference between this is what I want to do and it fulfills me because this is where my heart is. There's a difference between that and the expectation put on you to be that no matter where your heart's at, no matter
Mhm.
who you are, no matter what your education level is, no matter what your hopes, dreams, and goals for your life before you met this person was, no matter what that was, this is who you are now, and this is what I expect.
Mhm.
There's a difference between that. Big
Yeah, for
difference.
sure. Yeah, there definitely is. And yeah, so the towel incident, I don't know, I remember and I remember what I was going to say. He actually showed me a clip of one of our favorite pastors, Matt Chandler, and his wife.
Mm.
And his wife was talking about how it's her role and duty and her blessing to be able to take over kind of in like a motherly, nurturing way. The way that she described it was fine, though. It was like,
Mm.
yes, I do enjoy doing this. And when my husband does X, Y, and Z, like he creates this environment where it's easy for me to do this. Like I
Yeah.
want to do this. I want to serve him. And so that got twisted into, see, you're supposed to take care of me like a mother. And since it was a pastor saying it, I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have this all wrong. So that was more
Even though
like
she wasn't saying like a mother.
but it was twisted, right? So I got
Yeah.
used to him taking
Shred of
certain
truth.
language, yes, and turning it to his advantage, whether he was doing this consciously or subconsciously. Um, so yeah, that was my first introduction to him, um, changing language to be able to fit what he was trying, the point he was trying to get across. And he did that often with things in the Bible. Then one of the favorite verses to quote is in Ephesians, where it says, "Husbands, you or wives, you are to obey your own husbands in everything." That was a line that was used whenever I was disagreeing with him or anything. I remember one time we were standing in the kitchen, and I was making spaghetti, and I had just finished boiling the noodles, and I was going to dump the sauce on top of the noodles. And he was trying to talk to me about something, and I think he was frustrated that he didn't have my full attention. So he, like, not yelled, but raised his voice and said, "Stop, like, stop what you're doing," like, kind of loud. And it caught me off guard. I was like, I'm just pouring this into the noodles. And I kept going, and I slowly poured it in. And I was like, I can still hear you. I'm paying attention to you. You have my full attention. And then it was like, "See right there, Stephanie, like, I'm your husband. I told you to stop doing something. You're supposed to listen to me in everything. It says that in the Bible." And
The
I was like,
first time.
yes. And I was like, I was just pouring sauce into a pan. It wasn't this like huge life decision that I was making. And he was like, but you need to listen to me in everything. I'm supposed to be the head of you in everything. He's like, how do you know that I didn't know more information? Like, maybe I knew that the pan was really hot and it was going to splatter up at you and hurt you. And I said, stop. And if you didn't listen to me, you were going to get hurt. He's like, "What then?" And I was like, I don't know. I guess so. So it was drilled into my head that I have to, whatever
Yeah.
he says, I have to go with it. And of course, I would always minimize these red flags or completely dismiss them and just chalk it up to, like, it's totally fine. We're just still getting used to each other. We went really fast. I could justify anything in my head. But the
Yeah.
thing that was not going to happen was I was not getting a divorce for any reason. I remember when I was little, I used to pray every single day that our mom and dad would get back together. I would pray it every single night. Please let mommy and daddy get back together. And so from that, and just from my experience with the divorce and the events that happened afterwards, I did not want to get divorced for anything. So I was set, like, no matter what happens in our marriage, I'm going to work through it. We're going to work through it, and we're going to be fine. So I accepted so much behavior that wasn't healthy or safe at all.
Yeah. So like that's, I think, one of the drawbacks of being raised in church and raised in a Christian home and raised in all that. I think there's even more of a, I don't want to say disadvantage, but like compare a Christian couple who's the husband is just like what you're talking about, starting to with control, starting with the coercive control, then starts with the spiritual manipulation and twisting the Bible. Now compare that. What if, let's just say Jonah was married to somebody who didn't believe in God, didn't believe in the Bible, and he
Mhm.
would say something to his spouse like, "The Bible says you're supposed to honor me and obey me." His wife would be like, "I don't believe in any of that bull honky. Like, back
Yeah.
off, son." So
Yeah.
like, because we were raised in a Christian home and we believe in the Bible, and of course there's that component of spiritual manipulation where the husbands go like, "The Bible says you're supposed to honor, love, and obey me." Like,
Mhm.
no other couple wouldn't fly in any other relationship if that relationship
Right.
didn't believe in the Bible. So like Christian women and Christian men, the men who take advantage of that type of spiritual manipulation, like, yeah, y'all are at a disadvantage because you also believe in the same Bible and the same God, but the
Mhm.
interpretation of it, if you're not really grounded in your Bible and understand what those verses in Ephesians actually meant, like, of
Right.
course, you're gonna, like, submit and be like, "Yeah, I'm sorry," and blah, and
Mhm.
you go back and, like, the abuse doesn't stop. And it's not really at this point in the conversation, at this point in the story, I don't think it's got to the point of abuse yet. It's just more like control. It's the controlling factor,
Yeah.
trying to
It's
get the
the seeds.
control, the seed of control in the relationship. And then once those set in, then the abuse can really start, because now he's got his claws wrapped around you, and like he can pretty much manipulate you in any way he wants. So
Yeah.
that's what I see here. But yeah, the
Yeah.
people who listen to this, yeah, if you're a woman and you're Christian and your husband is abusive and he's also Christian, and he's used these terms like the Bible says you're supposed to obey me. Well, I'm
There's just more
calling.
to that
There's
story.
just way more to that than,
Yeah.
woman, go make me a sandwich. You need to obey me and go make me a sandwich. That's not what the Bible meant by that. So
Right.
anyway, I just felt I want to get my 2 cents in there.
Yeah, yeah. The Bible's definitely not talking about women just obeying their men in everything. It doesn't call for us
Like
to be a
being
doormat.
controlled. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then there's the verse right after that that says that men are to love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That verse was often left out because that requires the men to sacrifice all the way down to their lives if necessary for their wives. So
But
anybody who quotes go ahead.
yeah, that can also be misinterpreted from a male perspective. The male could be like, yeah, listen, you're supposed to obey me, because when it comes down to it, I'm supposed to die for you. So like
Yeah,
you need to like do this stuff for me, because when push comes to shove, I will protect you. I will die for you. And this is what you owe me for that allegiance of being able to
yeah,
die for you. So I
That's
could see it
true.
being twisted all around. The whole point of it is like when Jen's saying like her whole, like it's her dream job just to be a housewife, right?
hmm
Understand that there is an exchange, relationships
Mm.
give and take. Like there's an exchange that happens. Like her wanting to, what would make her happiest is to just nest the house, like have it clean, do the laundry, do the dishes, do all the meals, all right, and just serve her family like that. But there's a reciprocal exchange that has to happen on the husband side.
hmm
Like that shouldn't be an expectation. There should be an appreciation exchange. Like understand that, her husband, if she does that, there should be an exchange of appreciation of it. Like, yes, like, thank you for doing, like, it shouldn't be a one-way
Right.
street of like expectation on the husband's side and just a servanthood on the other side. Like there needs to be an exchange in a relationship, a give and take,
Yeah. You actually bring up a really good point, because in that same passage in Ephesians, what that talk starts out with is Paul saying that we should submit to each other. And that doesn't mean like a hierarchy and like we're confused about who's on top. He's not really even talking about being in a hierarchy. It's talking about loving one another, and here's how you walk that out. If you're a wife, you submit to your husband and everything. If you're a husband, you love and protect your wife, and the same things that Jesus did for the church. And it is this exchange, and it is absolutely includes appreciation from on both sides. Like, let's remember that culture, the culture back then, women were not, they weren't equal with men in the culture. And it had been that way for a long time. These women didn't know any different. They never had jobs. They always, that was their thing. That's what they did. And I mean, we're not trying to talk about situational ethics. It's not about that. But to see that the principle behind it is not trying to be obedience and domination or hierarchy. It's not about that. It's about everybody doing kind of like pitching in the way that they are, like that they're supposed to. yes, there's order, and it works when you have a family that there's order. In an organization, there's order, and it works when everybody does their job in that order and respects the authority above them. But that also means that the authority who is above respects those positions that are underneath. And like in this scenario, the if my husband, like me feeling completely appreciated for wanting to stay home and take care of the home, would look like my husband recognizing that I can go out and do something else. I can go get a job. I can have a career in this day and age. Our culture, women can pretty much do anything. And I choose to give all that up because I want to be home and taking care of our family, raising our kids, doing all the things. And I think that him recognizing that she's sacrificing something that she can something else that she could be doing for to do this, and it does benefit me. It benefits our kids. It benefits whether you have kids or not. It benefits the husband. So while he might be kind of on the top of as far as authority goes in the order, um, she's equal. She is my equal partner. There's other places in the Bible where the wife is called, like, he's specifically being talked to, like, she's your equal partner. Don't treat
Yeah.
her like she's beneath you. She's your equal partner. You
Mhm.
know, the husband has like the responsibility of, hey, the ship goes down. He makes the wrong call. They together make the wrong decision. It's kind of on the husband to take responsibility. So there's a lot of give and take, but that's the point. There's like give and
Right.
take and mutual respect and mutual honor. It just can never stop at wives submit to your husbands. It can't ever
No.
stop there.
Yeah,
It
it
doesn't
definitely
start
can't.
there. The passage
No,
didn't even start there.
I know. And they always love to use that verse, and so and another verse that was used against me was the one that talks about not letting the sun go down on your anger.
Yeah, Ephesians 4.
Yes, that would turn into it would be like midnight, right? And we would just start getting into a conversation, and like I had work at 6:30 in the morning. I was a nanny at the time, and so I had to make sure I was out of the house by, I don't know, like 5:15, 5:30 every morning. So it's midnight and I'm like, I need to go to sleep, but we would be arguing about something and Jonah would say, it says in the Bible that we can't let the sun go down on our anger. So that means we need to solve this tonight, which translated into he needs to lecture me for 3 hours and then get me to apologize the exact way that he wanted me to apologize. And then after we talked about that for a few hours, then he would say, now we're going to talk about why it took so long for you to apologize. And so it was like psychological torture for me because the conversations usually consisted of what I call and what's known as word salad. So it felt like
Mm,
we were just talking in circles and never actually
yeah.
coming to a resolution or even to a point. And I'm like, after so long of talking in circles, your brain starts to become like mashed potatoes,
Hmm.
and I felt like I was starting to go cross-eyed. I'm like, there are too many words that are coming out of your mouth right now that I don't understand, and I need you to stop saying all of them. So then I would get to a point where I would have apologized for anything. It didn't matter what he accused
Mm-hmm.
me of. I was just like, okay, I have to put on this face. I have to act. I have to cry so he knows I mean it. And so I would get myself worked up and I would be like, you know what? I'm so sorry. You're right. I didn't see this before, but I can see it clearly now. I'm so sorry that I did this to you. I will do my best to never do it again. And then he'd be like, great, let's talk about why it took you so long. So then I would have to come up with something else like, oh, it took me so long because I was feeling insecure and I didn't want to show you my true self, and I was worried if you saw who I really was, you wouldn't want to be with me anymore. Like I would just have to make up something
Yeah.
that was acceptable to him. And
Mhm.
then I would immediately have to be in a happy mood. Like, "Oh, we solved it now. Now we have to
Yeah.
smile." And if I wasn't in a happy mood, it was, "Why are you trying to make me feel bad for our conversation? Like, why aren't you in a better mood? We solved it. Everything should be fine now." And it just wasn't. I was emotionally exhausted after talking for 3 hours. I had to get to sleep for work and stuff like that. So that happened often where we would both drink, and then we would get into these conversations of, "Hey, why did you do that the other week?" Or, "Hey, why did you do this?" Or, "Why don't you do this?" And it would just turn into these conversations that would last for hours. It was bad. I remember one time we were talking all night, like all night, did not stop talking. And then I was at the point where I was like, I have to go to work, like I have to leave. So I got ready and I went to go to work, and he followed me outside because we didn't come to our resolution. So he's following me outside, and he actually stood um he stood in front of my car, so I couldn't leave until I apologized. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to go to work." So I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about this. I'm sorry about this. Blah, 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 blah. Like, I gotta go. We could talk about it later, but I gotta go." So after I apologized, then he would get out of the way of my car and let me drive off. But he stood in front of my car several times, preventing me from going to work because he wanted to finish a conversation. And it was that like level of control and like ownership, like, "I own you. I will do whatever I want, and you need to listen to me because I'm the head of the household." But go ahead, John.
I was just thinking like, man, what could you have done if you had the fortitude early on in the relationship? Like if you had the fortitude to like ask some probing questions. I'm trying to think it's just to benefit people who may watch or listen that might be dating, but they're not married yet because they could be dating
Mm,
relation. There's the dating relationship and then there's the marriage, which, a lot of times it's, you really get to know somebody in a marriage because you're living with them in a day every day. But I would just imagine
yes.
if you'd have been like, when you guys were dating, if you would have asked a probing question, like if you were to bring up Ephesians 5:22 naturally in a conversation, and just be like, hey, I've been thinking about that verse in Ephesians about wives submitting to their husbands. Like, what do you think that actually means in a marriage? And just
Hmm.
sit back and shut up and just let him talk.
Yes.
And like look for the revealing things like, you know, a red flag would be like, well, he quotes verse 22, wives submit to your husbands. So he's like cherry picking the verse to give him
Yes.
the power and ignore the rest. Like that could be a red flag, but just like asking a probing question like that and then just sitting back and shutting your mouth and just letting him talk would probably have
Yeah.
revealed a lot before you guys
Yes.
actually got married. Right. So
Yes.
thinking if like more women I don't know. Are women afraid to ask probing questions like that when they're in a relationship with their like godsend of a man? I don't know. I'm just trying to think practically, like trying to help somebody out that might be thinking about getting married. Like, could they ask these questions? Is that okay?
Yeah,
I don't know.
you should definitely be able to ask these questions, and a lot of open-ended questions are really good, so you're not leading them in any way, shape, or form. But for me, I was afraid to ask questions like this because I was afraid of the answer that I might get. And so I knew I was like, okay, in this frame of mind where I'm at right now, I know that I am safe and I am comfortable. But if I ask this question, it could possibly open the door for me to start doubting things. And then I'm stuck in a marriage that I refuse to end because I I never wanted my parents to get divorced, so I was like, "I'm not doing this to my kids." So then I'd be stuck in that mindset. So, for me, I didn't ask a lot of these questions because I was just hoping that they would work out. I was too afraid of what the answer could possibly be at this point when I was already in it and married.
I mean, your
So
situation was a little bit different. Like you guys were
right.
engaged overnight and married 2 weeks later, or some really fast
Seriously.
timeline like that. So like you were just head over heels. I was more speaking to like somebody who might be in a relationship with a guy and they're thinking about marriage. Like maybe some of these probing questions could come up so that you don't. It's better to cause a little bit of pain and realize that this may
Yeah.
not be like now versus like now
Yeah.
getting married and locked in, and God forbid you guys have kids and now you have kids to contend with. Like you can't just leave. Now there's kids. It's complicated. I mean, we heard all of that in the last
Mhm.
3 episodes of the podcast with Jen's story. Like
Yeah.
if y'all could, or if people, young people in these relationships today can just sit down first of all and just have a very mature conversation about the hierarchical things of marriage and what they think. Like, that's super mature to just have those discussions, because if it ends up that y'all disagree on that, like that's gonna be some big problems when you put a
Mhm.
ring on that finger and now you guys are
Mhm.
locked in. Especially if you believe like you, or divorce is like the very last, you don't want it, you want to just stay married to that one person. I also have that kind of like goal. I don't even want to call it a goal. Like, I don't want to get divorced. Like, I just don't believe
Mhm.
in it, no matter how
Right.
bad it gets. And, not that I'm not going to bunny trail this too far, but like Amanda and I have been through some stuff, like
Yeah.
stuff. And from years ago to recent, like we've been through stuff. And there have been times that I remember early on, we lived in Michigan. I remember this sitting in my room and I looked at her and I'm like, woman, are you going to let me lead you? And it was
Oh,
like, oh my God. And I'm thinking about that now. Like that was one part of that. Like I had this misconception about wives submitting to your husbands. I thought like I was like everything, the buck stops with me. And I used to use this analogy. Like just think of it like business ownership. Like you own 49% of this marriage. I own 51%. I am the ultimate sayer in this. Like when it
yeah.
comes down to it, because the buck stops with me, as the Bible says. Now, in some way, shape, or form, like my belief in that is like, yes, we do life together, right? But I still think, and maybe this is wrong, I don't know, nobody is really corrected, but I still think when it comes down to it, if we were like deadlocked on a decision and she was opposed and I was for, I still firmly believe that I have the authority to make that choice of, no, we are going this direction. Okay.
Mhm.
You want to go this way. You're dead set on it. I really feel our family should go this way. I really feel that it's my responsibility and it's my, I don't even want to say authority. I hate that word, but to direct the family down this road, because ultimately if it
Mhm.
fails, I'm the one that has to accept the full responsibility of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Honestly, I would agree with that. I
But
would agree
early
with
on, I
that.
didn't fully understand that. I was just taking that as like the Bible gives me the authority to make decisions and you just need to follow them.
So it's
Yeah.
it's what I want to do and this I got
Yeah,
you.
so they take it, a lot of guys, younger guys that are less mature or whatever, they take that as that spiritual authority that God has instilled on them as husbands, and they take it to the nth degree. Like, no, I want blue candy on my dresser every
Yes.
morning. You better put blue candy because
Exactly.
I have the authority. Whereas
Yeah.
that's not how God intended it to be.
Yeah.
Right.
We as the male figures in the relationship, yes, we do bear the responsibility, but we also have to accept that responsibility and not have a cop out. Like you can't use your wife as a cop out. You can't say it's her fault. Like if you're going to
Right.
accept the role of my word is final, and I'm again, we're getting into
We can
culture.
debate that,
Yeah,
right?
we can debate that in the culture today, and I get all that. I'm just saying, like, if men are going to accept the responsibility, if they expect their word is final kind of stance in the marriage, they also have to accept the responsibility of that final word. Where if it doesn't work out, you got to kind of man up and be like, man, I made the wrong decision, and go apologize to your wife and go apologize to people
Right.
around you and own that decision and not try to
Yeah.
pawn it off. So if you're going to accept the responsibility and you guys agree as a married couple that yes, your word is final, but you also have to accept the responsibility of when your words, when it goes not your way, because it will, you have to
Yeah.
kind of pony up to that and be like, yeah, that didn't go my way, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
I think there's like, well, just think of it like a job. There's perks to every job. there's
Right.
also challenges and like risks, inherent risks to having that position. And you got to accept all of it because that's what comes with the position. You take it or you leave it. If you want to be a husband, you accept the, the perks, the things you like with the things that you might not enjoy too much. You
Mm-hmm.
have to accept all of it. I mean, I think it's the same with anything.
But who thinks about this
Yeah.
stuff in their 20s?
Nobody. Nobody,
No.
especially
Yeah.
because our culture doesn't really teach it. Even in church, I mean, I don't know, we just don't talk about this kind of stuff to young people enough. We don't focus on it. We don't talk to young people about marriage because they're not married. You
Mm-hmm.
have a youth group, you have maybe a college and career class, you maybe have a singles class, and then, you have your marrieds class, and maybe that, diverges into different age groups or whatever, but they're so separated in the churches that I've been involved in anyway. Maybe somebody else has a different experience, but I think that it would be very healthy. And I mean, I don't want to put blame on like, the church is doing this so wrong because honestly, high school kids, they don't want to hear about that stuff. That they're not in that stage of life, but
Yeah.
it's just stuff that would be so helpful to know when you're younger and when you're looking at dating and when you're looking at like, hey, I think I might want to get married someday, like, and you're starting to look at the opposite sex in that kind of way. It would be helpful to know this stuff, start paying
Yeah.
attention and ask questions. So I guess on both sides, like the adults of the society and the young people, I think both just need to have more. There should be more focus on all of this. And if there was, I don't know, I think more people would be more prepared to go
Yes.
into a healthy marriage, or maybe some
Yes.
bad relationships would be headed off before they really got going. I don't know.
Because when has now I may get in trouble. Okay, I might get in trouble for this. Might. We'll see. We'll see where this goes. When has a purely 50-50 partnership been successful? Like I'm talking business or I'm talking relationships. Like if the authoritative power was 50-50 across the board, every decision 50-50, like show me a scenario where that actually worked versus a scenario where there's, and that's why businesses have board members and there's voting rights and there's like, I think, and I don't know, I guess I don't want to try to equate a marriage to a business, but I'm thinking that like there has to be some hierarchy, there has to be some division of authority in a marriage, in a relationship. I believe that, but I believe that, and for that to work well, this is why I think, I mean, might be wrong, like during our parents' generation and even the generation before that, where you had a man and a woman literally married for 60 plus years. Okay. In that time frame, things were a lot more traditional. Like things were
Mm-hmm.
a lot more traditional. They were a lot more of the, the woman's role was to be the homemaker and all that. But I think the husbands had understood that and had more respect for their wives and appreciated them for that and all that. And somehow, somewhere along the way, that got twisted and morphed to where like, you know, that it just wasn't like, it's not like that anymore. You don't see marriages lasting 60 plus years. And I keep going back to like, was it because, is it because society has lost this, like this division of authority in a marriage? Like the man should have the 51% and the woman the 49%. But because of our culture today and how immature men are, they take that to the nth degree. And we've been, like, I don't want to repeat myself, but if we can just, as men, guys, if we can just learn that the responsibility and the authority of the relationship as God has defined it, if we can just learn what that really truly means and stop using that as an excuse to control our wives, like
Mm-hmm.
I think more marriages, like 50% of marriages wouldn't end in divorce, or whatever the crazy statistic is. And I'm not defending like men being the ultimate superior being over women. That's not what I'm even saying, because I don't even believe that. There's like, women are generally just smarter than guys to begin with. But like, I just feel like the men of today's culture just have it backwards.
Yeah.
And I'm not the perfect husband. Like I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal and say I'm the perfect husband. Far from it. But like, come on, like this is why, like, we shouldn't have to be creating a podcast around domestic abuse and coercive control. We shouldn't have to do this. Like, shouldn't have to. But because our world is filled with immature, weak men. Like, we're having to do this kind of crap, and we're having to try to educate people. And it's, again, we said this before, there are women that abuse men, and there are men that abuse other men, but predominantly very high percentage is just men, weak, immature, insecure men trying to dominate women, and they think it's godly, and it's not. Sorry, I went on a little tangent there, but
you're fine. Yeah, well, I think it has a
if
lot.
you want. I'm just saying. I mean, if you disagree with anything I said, it's fine, no big deal. I just,
Well, I think it's a lot of men not being the godly leaders that they are called to be, not the right way. They're taking their own version of being a leader, which is to own, dominate, possess women. And I think if men were, everybody needs Jesus. I wish that there was a class or something where it teaches you what being a godly leader looks like. I wish that everybody just had to take that class, because I feel like a lot of things. Yes, I feel like that would benefit everybody, and I feel like marriages would stay intact more if the men stood up and actually were godly leaders the way that they were supposed to be. I believe that a lot more marriages would stay together, but we're moving away from that and not towards that in society now. So,
yeah, and I want to just quickly, maybe just defend the men a little bit, because there's also on the other side of that is the whole feminist movement, which has not helped, which hasn't helped a woman's cause at all. It has not done what I think it was originally started to be, and that's done a lot of damage too. And I remember when we were kids, sitcoms started to make fun of the dad figure, and whatever man was in the sitcom, that guy was always in a lot of shows. The men were cast as like the bumbling buffoons.
yes.
And where they're the woman in the situation always was like the smart, intelligent, like almost babysitter of this guy. And those were the sitcoms. That was entertainment when we were growing up. And so I think society as a whole over the last 40 years or so has learned that it's like a subliminal message that was constantly being played in our head, those kinds of messages. And I think that kind of thing on a societal level has really, really contributed to this problem. And I'm sorry, God made us differently, and he made men, to be protectors and providers and all the things. And he made women to be nurturing and to have babies. Like, we need to be nurturing to have kids. So there's just that, he gave us different roles because he made us differently. And Steph, you're absolutely right. If we all just had Jesus, if we all just obeyed what God said in the Bible, if everybody put in as much effort into their relationships as God wants, we would not have these problems.
Right.
We wouldn't. That's why God gave us a guidebook called the Bible to know how to live. But we don't listen to it, and so we have these problems, and then there's these power plays between men and women. And I think it's pretty equal on both sides of the fence. And I think the fault, at least in our country, kind of just lies with both parties.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is in our country. Other countries are different. There's other things playing out there too. But
Yeah.
Well, Steph, you went from head over heels, high school, not high school. I'm sorry, not high school sweethearts. But anyway, you went head over heels with Jonah. You guys, really fast, really fast marriage, engagement to marriage, to now some of these, and he was raised in church. And so it goes back to what what I was saying is I think was what happened was like, he had this view of how his wife should be because in his growing up
Mm-hmm.
experience, he witnessed his mother cleaning up and being the homemaker, which is what she enjoyed doing. And that was his expectation with
Mm-hmm.
you because he saw his mom do it. Then, and there's a difference between like having your mother clean the house and clean up after you versus you just being lazy and not picking up a freaking
Mm-hmm.
towel. But
Right.
what that turned into is an expectation that he saw what his mother did growing up, and he saw how she invested into the house to make it a home. And not even saying that was the part that was wrong, but just having the assumption that that's what you should have been doing this whole time goes back to that expectation. And when you weren't doing that, he felt it his responsibility as the husband to correct that.
Mm-hmm.
And that came across as you like that came across as him like literally treating you almost like when you train a dog to
Mm-hmm.
go outside and he goes potty inside, you have to punish and yell at the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, if you yell at him and punish him enough, the dog will figure out that it's not okay to go pee on the floor to go outside.
Yeah. Right.
So he's kind of treating you like he's training a dog.
Yeah. He was
And
conditioning me.
he was conditioning you like he would a dog. Now, dogs are physical creatures, and some men take it to this point. Dogs learn by physical activity. This is why you see, mom dogs like go after their pups. They're not trying to harm them, but they are very mean and very physical with their pups to teach the pups different things, right and wrong. Dogs, that's how you train
Right.
a dog. You're very you get physical with the dog at some points in time. That's how they
Mm-hmm.
learn. A lot of men think that they need to get physical with their wives to teach them and train them, and
Mm-hmm.
some of that is physical abuse, others is verbal and mental and control and all that. It sounds like we're starting to ramp up a little bit in the pattern here to,
Mm-hmm.
at first it was like more just talking, arguing. Now it's ramping up into a little bit more of like persuasion and control. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to see a progression, an increase in severity of the encounters between you and him.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
If I
they
can,
did. Yeah, they did ended up getting worse. So, him standing in front of my car, that was an escalation that I wasn't used to. So that was different. All the while, the arguments were getting more frequent and longer. So it would go from a couple-hour argument to the one night he made me stay up for the whole night. So that was like a 6-hour argument. That was really bad. Other things that he would do to kind of ramp it up is it would be late at night. We would be talking again. And the one time I just wanted to go to sleep, I was too tired. My brain wasn't working anymore. I said, I'm going to sleep. So I go and I lay down in bed. Well, he comes and sits on the edge of the bed. And every time, and he's still talking to me. He's like, no, Steph, we got to figure this out. Why did you do this? Why did you say this? Blah, 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 blah. I was trying to go to sleep. So I had my eyes closed. And as soon as I would close my eyes, he would like jump on the bed a little bit. Not jump, but he would like bounce on it to wake me up. And I was just like, please leave me alone. I want to go to sleep. We could talk about this in the morning. And he would say, no, we can't let the sun go down on our anger. And he would bounce on the bed, bounce on the bed. So he would keep me up for another hour doing that. And that is psychological warfare right there, is
yeah,
yeah.
preventing somebody from sleeping.
yeah,
Like,
that
Mm-hmm.
it is. It is. I was
And
just,
your mind does go loopy.
I'm trying to
Yes.
imagine if I was doing that to Amanda, if I said like, hey, we can't let the sun go down on our anger. I could just hear her saying, if you want the moon to come up with wrath, you'd stop.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not fun. So he got to the point where he was bouncing on the bed, and then the one night he got a glass of water while I was laying down and trying to sleep, and he threw it in my face. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I have to keep you up. We have to continue this conversation. We can't let the sun go down." Yeah, so he threw a glass of water in my face to keep me up. I was so mad after that. And so things were escalating. They were getting worse. I could see a pattern. It was he never physically put hands on me. The closest thing he got to that was one night we were arguing. We were sitting in our bed, and we had a headboard that kind of came up, really a solid wood headboard that came up over our heads. And the one time he was talking to me about something, and he got so frustrated that he turned around and he punched like within inches of my head right next to the headboard as hard as he could. And that got me to stop talking really quickly, and it got me to agree with whatever he said. I was like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I did that. I'm so sorry I spoke that way. I'm so sorry that I gave you that look," whatever. It didn't matter. It scared me enough. So I don't know. Again, I don't know if he was subconsciously doing it or if he knew what he was doing, but he definitely got me to comply with him that night. And then another night where it was getting bad, I had expressed to him that I wanted help with my drinking because it had become out of hand. And it was one night I was not drinking, and he said that I wasn't being nice enough to him. Like I wasn't in like a chippy cheery, happy go lucky mood, and he didn't like my mood. And so I told him, I was like, "Listen, I'm just really struggling with not having any alcohol and stuff like that. My body is just whatever." And he told me, he said, "You need to drink as much alcohol as needed in order for you to be nice to me." So
My goodness.
he knew I was struggling with drinking. I had admitted to him that I had a drinking problem, and he told me that I needed to drink as much alcohol as needed in order for me to be nice to him. That broke something in me.
What's
I
the
was like, "You."
timeline? What's the
Yeah, I
timeline?
know.
how
From when we
long
get
are we
married
So,
to now,
we
like how much time has gone by?
So we started talking again in summer of 2013. We
Yep.
got engaged at the end of summer 2013. We got married. So we were still living at his parents' house. We got married in July of 2014. And then we moved out on our own, I think that August in 2014. So we
Okay.
were living at the treehouse with the boys. And this is where all of this stuff took place, was at the treehouse when we were away from his parents' ears. So nobody could hear him arguing like this to me except for the boys, but they were in their own lives and confused and didn't know what was going on.
But from the
Um,
living in the treehouse to punching the headboard, like what's the
that was
time frame there?
probably a few months. It wasn't that long because when we got to the treehouse, um, we were thrown into all kinds of stress. It might have been in the winter time, actually. So the winter time of 2014. So this was after maybe we'd been in the treehouse for maybe like 5 months, I think. I'm a little fuzzy on the timeline there,
Mhm.
unfortunately, because I was drinking a lot.
But
I would wake up.
it wasn't years into the marriage. We're talking like
No, it
this is
was
like
less than a year.
less than a
Hmm.
year into actual marriage.
Yeah.
This stuff starts popping up.
Yeah. So it was less than a year that we were together. And so after that incident, I decided that we needed therapy. We needed some kind of counseling. I was like, we need to do something. I'm like, this is not okay. So he, at first was like, no, we're not talking to anybody about our problems. We just need to talk to each other. Like the only
Hmm.
people that's going to fix our problems, Steph, is
Sounds
us. So
familiar.
we need to,
Yeah.
right. We need to talk through our problems ourselves. We don't need outside help. But I was like, no, we need it. So he went with me. We had a couple people that were trying to counsel us. I don't remember who we first started to go see, but I think it was just another married couple. And after each counseling session, he would often say to me something along the lines of, I feel like I just got dragged through the mud for that whole time and that they're blaming everything on me. And I wanted to be like, well, you're kind of causing these log arguments and stuff like that. And you hit the headboard and you stand in front of my car and you tell a person who's struggling with alcohol to drink as much as they need to be happy. Like, these are all things that are like, they're not okay. These are really bad things.
Kind of things that you're
and
doing.
and you did them. So yeah, it makes sense why they're saying that. So we would switch counselors. We would go to somebody else. We tried another guy who his parents had suggested. They knew this guy for decades. His name was like Tim or John or something. We'll call him Tim. Anyways, Tim tried to help us. And again, every time we went there afterwards, Jonah would be like, I feel like I'm the only one that's getting in trouble. Like, doesn't he see all the stuff that you're doing, kind of thing? And I was like, well, I admit, and he knows about my drinking problem and I'm trying to quit. Um, and, and so like I'm telling them what I'm doing too. I would often just go in there and say, this is what I've been doing. And then this is how Jonah reacted. And then we would talk about his reactions. And everyone had the same kind of like, yeah, like Jonah, this is not okay how you're talking to your wife. And he would sit there and be like, I know, I'm working on it and stuff like that. But then the car ride home, he would be like, well, why did you say that? And you made it seem this way. And now they think that I'm a bad husband and blah, 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 blah. And so he did not like going to counseling. So we eventually ended up stopping. We stopped going. So let's see. After counseling didn't work, then I went to our pastor and I was just like, okay, if I can't fix him, then I'm going to fix myself and at least like stop drinking. So I went to the pastor and I took a friend with me and I said, hi, I have a problem with drinking. I need your help and I want to be honest about it. And we ended up getting a meeting and Jonah was there and the pastor's just like, all right, Jonah, like, what are you going to do to help your wife quit drinking? And Jonah was like, well, I need the alcohol for my back. I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. Um, and so he said the alcohol, the alcohol is my medicine. Like, I have to have it every night just to go to sleep. I can't sleep without it. So basically, he said that he would help me, but like he wasn't going to get it out of the house. And that was a problem for me because when I wanted to drink, I was going to go searching for it wherever I could get it. And so I remember asking him, I was like, hey, would it be okay if, like, after you have your medicine for the night, if you could lock it up in the trunk of the car and then keep the car keys under your pillow when you sleep? And I was like, I know this sounds ridiculous. I was like, but I'm not going to go under your pillow and get the car keys and try to drink in the middle of the night after you fall asleep. That's what I was worried about. And he told me no. He said he's not going to do that. He's like, I'm not going to inconvenience myself and put this in a different location. You just need to have more discipline and you need to just be able to have some self-control. So that was really hard to hear too, because he would sleep with it right next to him. Like, it was on the floor of our bedroom, right on his side of the bed. So as soon as he fell asleep, I would go and drink out of that. And then I would fill it up with water so it didn't look like I drank any. And so that's when I started hiding things because he wasn't going to help me. So I was like, well, then I'm going to hide that I'm doing this then. Still continued to try to get help for drinking. I was not a good person. I hurt a lot of people when I was drinking. Gosh, I wish I could totally eliminate that, like, from my life, like just my timeline. I wish I never started drinking when I was 14. So, but I can't, and it's there. So I do want people to know, like, I added to the demise of the relationship. It was not just because of the abuse. Like, I brought my own things to it, and it was only exacerbated with the drinking. So, so we're at the point where I can't stop drinking. I'm getting help for it. I'm getting help from the pastor and everything like that. He tells me that no, he's not going to hide it. And then sometime later, not too much later, I ended up getting pregnant with our son Ender. I think I found out in April of 2015 that I was pregnant. So that was a huge change, going from drinking to being pregnant and not being able to. And that, I mean, that helped for sure. But then we had new stresses now added, and we had to navigate that. So I found out I was pregnant. I told him Ender was not a planned pregnancy. He was a very welcome surprise. I like when people say that. It's a welcome surprise. Oh, found out that I was pregnant with him. And then we were not about to live in the treehouse with a brand new baby and two roommates. We decided to ask his parents if we could move back in with them. And that's what we did. We said, hey, until we have the baby, can we live here, save some money, and then we'll get out after the baby's born sometime. Well, we ended up staying at his parents' house from 2015 until 2000, I want to say 2000, late 2016, early 2000. No, it was late 2016. So we stayed there for over a year. So things calmed down a little bit when I got pregnant, because I don't know, maybe he just didn't want to argue with me as much because I was pregnant. I think also at this point, I had learned enough to be able to read his emotions. So I would base my like kind of attitude and what I would say off of how I was reading his emotions that day. So if I knew he was going to be in a bad mood, I just tried to be extra like, oh my gosh, everything is great and I love you and life is good and look at our baby, or we're planning for our baby to be here soon. I just try to keep conversations light. But they then, towards the end of my pregnancy, the arguments got bad again.
All right, guys, real quick. Future John here. We had to pause the recording. Something came up mid-sentence when Steph was explaining her story. So we're about a week later. We're going to pick right back up where we left off. For those of you who are listening, you probably don't care. For those of you who are watching, some of us are wearing different outfits. So there's the explanation. So we're going to pick up where Steph left off, and she was going into kind of a quick recap to bring everybody to the story. So I'll just let Steph take it from here.
Well, thanks, Sean. Oh, yeah. Just to pick up where we left off, I was talking about how I had gone to, me and Jonah had gone to a pastor for me to get help with drinking, and I asked for him to hide the alcohol for me because he needed it every night as medicine for a condition that he has called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So he needed to drink it every night, according to him, to fall asleep. So I asked him to please hide it when he was done drinking it every night, and he refused to do that. He said, I just needed to have more self-control and not touch the alcohol after he went to bed. And as an alcoholic at the time, I told him that wasn't going to work. But nevertheless, he decided he was going to do what he wanted to do, and I decided I was going to get help by myself. So I went and talked to another pastor at our church, and I got a meeting set up, and I basically said, listen, I have some things that I want to admit and I need help with. Got this meeting set up, went to church, and it was after the sermon. So after the sermon, it was just me at church that day. Jonah, I don't know why, but Jonah was not at church with me. So afterwards, I went to the back and I met with our pastor and another female who was following along with my my story about, or my journey with alcohol. Really, she was just coming up alongside me to support me. So it was the three of us in this room, and I told them, I admitted to them I have a problem with drinking. I told them my whole story. And then the pastor's like, we're going to pray and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So he gave me some practical steps and stuff. So we were in the middle of praying, right? And everyone's taking turns praying. So it's a little bit of a longer prayer session, but my phone starts buzzing, and it wasn't a text message. It was a phone call. And so I muted it very carefully. But then it continued to ring. I was getting one phone call right after the other. So it was just continuously vibrating while we're praying. And that was so uncomfortable. Like, I don't know if you can picture yourself at your church with your lead pastor trying to get help, asking for help, and having your phone go off like
Blowing up.
nonstop while you're praying. I was like beet red. I was so embarrassed. I was sweating. I was so embarrassed. And so that was a closing prayer. So the meeting was over. My phone is still ringing incessantly. So I get just out of the room and I finally answer the call, and it's Jonah on the other line, and he's pissed. Like, he starts going off, I am your husband. You need to answer the phone when I call you. And he's saying this so loud that you could actually hear it, right? And the lead pastor happened to be standing, I don't know, maybe like 3 feet away from me. And so he could hear not exactly what Jonah was saying, but he could hear him yelling at me. And he just looks over at me and just kind of like, just gave me this look. And I was like, sorry. And he said, Stephanie, he should not be talking to you like that. And I was like, I know, I got to go. Like, I have to talk to him. And so I was on the phone with Jonah, and I explained to him, I was like, listen, we were in the middle of praying. Like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, I don't care what you're doing. I am your husband. You answer me the first time I call you. And I was like, so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes, sir. I will definitely make sure I do that. I do not want to get in trouble next for like the next time I do that.
I tell Amanda that, and she just laughs at me. She's like, whatever.
I know, but you say it jokingly.
Right.
Oh,
It's definitely different when it's a joke. But yeah, no, he was, it was a little crazy. So,
you should have put him on speaker and let the pastor listen to all that.
so I was like, I was so scared, but I just wanted, when our pastor overheard him, I was like, thank you, God, somebody is now hearing it. It's not just me saying like, hey, he's not nice to me. Like, somebody else is hearing it. So the lead pastor now had an idea of what was going on. And so I started to be in touch more with him. One of my other friends, her name is Eden. She was there with me through all of the bad stuff. She recommended me staying in touch with the lead pastor and keeping him up to date on anything that was going on in our lives. So I remember another story. So it wasn't too long after this, right? I'm on my trying to stop drinking on my own story or journey. And there was one day I had to go. I was at work, and maybe I had been at work maybe 2 hours, and I was a nanny. And I got a phone call or a text message. I don't remember what, but it was Jonah, and he sounded like he was going to hurt himself. So he was saying all kinds of things that made me believe that he was going to hurt himself. And he had done this before. He had threatened to harm himself if from my perspective, if life didn't go his way. But he saw it as, nobody loves me, woe is me, I'm just going to take myself out kind of thing. So he would say things that would make me believe that he was going to try to harm himself multiple times. And so this wasn't new to me, but I decided to text Eden and I said, "Hey, he's saying this. I'm not sure. I don't think he's serious, but like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what do I biblically do about this?" She instantly said, "You need to call the pastor right now and you need to leave work and you and the pastor need to go meet Jonah at your apartment where he's sending you these text messages." So I was like, "Okay, Eden, you are way wiser than me. I'm going to absolutely do what you say." I um I get on the phone with with our pastor and I tell him everything that's going on, and I was like, "Listen," I was like, "Is there any way that you can meet me back at my apartment? I'm leaving work. I'm not sure if we need to take him to a hospital. I'm not sure what's going on. I need counsel. I don't know what to do here." Oh, that was a little bit crazy. When Jonah so we all decided we were going to meet up at my apartment, okay? We get to my apartment. I meet Kenny, who is our lead pastor. I meet him outside in the parking lot. And I'm just like, he does not want you to come up. He does not want to talk to you. I think he's just embarrassed. I think he's scared. So so Kenny is literally trying to talk to Jonah. He's got him on the phone now. He's like, "Hey man, like I just want to come up and talk. Like it's nothing, there's no judgment. I just want to make sure you're okay," kind of thing. So Jonah finally gives the okay, "All right, you guys can come up." But he's so mad at me because I've involved the lead pastor in the middle of our mess. And Jonah was one to, I don't know necessarily that he liked to, he just, yeah, it was like a keeping up of appearances kind of thing. He didn't want anybody to know how bad it was. So me inviting the pastor was like a big no-no. Um, but anyways, Kenny ended up coming upstairs and sitting in our living room. It was me, Jonah, and Kenny sitting in the living room. I was so embarrassed. Our apartment was trashed, not like a party trashed, but like there was just, I lived with 3 boys. It was a mess. There was stuff all over the place. So he's like moving wrappers off of the couch so he can sit down. Like, I was so embarrassed. And I was like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Sat down and he talked to Jonah for a little bit. And, Jonah started opening up to him. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're getting somewhere. This is fantastic." And then we that conversation ended up like landing on a happy note. Like, "Hey man, this is okay. Everybody struggles. This is what we're here for. This is what the church is for. They come up alongside of you when you're struggling and we work through this together." But basically he's like, "But it is work. Like you're going to have to work at it." And I remember that was the day that Kenny told us, he's like, "Listen guys," he's like, "I feel like your marriage is hanging on by a thread. And if you
Jeez.
don't if you don't fully trust God and put all of your trust in God and fully give yourselves over to him, like give your life to him completely, I think that you guys are going to end up divorced." Like he actually said that to us. And I was like, oh, I was like, great. So awesome that the lead pastor who married us said that
Yeah.
he thinks that we're going to get a divorce. So after that, uh, things got a little bit better for a short period of time because I think Jonah just felt embarrassed. And I don't know, whenever somebody he respected would talk to him, he seemed to hear it more. He actually seemed to hear it and take it in and want to make changes. But things never really did change. We were on a trajectory heading downhill from there. And I think it might have been that same week that that we ended up talking to Kenny at my apartment. That same week is when I looked up, is this abuse? Like, is this happening to me? And it was because Jonah would say things like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'd be better. You guys would be better off without me, stuff like that. So I looked up, I was like, is it abuse if somebody threatens their life every time things get hard? And it came up like, yes. And it gave all the description of it and everything. So I was like, okay. So then I went into research mode and I just researched all kinds of abuse. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what's happening. So then I started getting a little bit more bold. And I would talk to his parents every once in a while when it got really bad and my emotions were just like spilling out of me. And And his parents, when I would tell him like verbatim, he just said to me that our wedding vows mean nothing because I've never upheld them. When I would say that, those words verbatim to his parents, they would both kind of just give me this like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry that that's happening to you. I don't really think it's as bad as you're making it seem kind of look. I don't know.
Oh
It
man.
was, and I'm not saying that that's what they were thinking, right? That's just how I felt. That's what I perceived in the moment, that they were like, I don't think it's as bad as you think it is. And kind of like, marriage is hard. These are the things that you have to work through. And I'm like, this is abuse. Like, I now know
Yeah.
that this is abuse. And it just seemed like they wanted to stay out of our marriage completely, which,
Yeah.
look, like, I get it. I do get it. But I believe that if your child is actively abusing, well, not child, if your grown son or daughter is actively abusing another person and that person is coming to you and saying, hey, I need help, like minimizing it, dismissing it, or just saying that's your marriage, we can't help you. I feel like there needs to be more said there. I feel like there's and I might be wrong. But I feel like the parents of whoever is abusing need to say, "Hi, what you're doing is not okay. You need to stop
Yeah.
doing this."
Right.
Now,
Steph, sorry, I just was wondering, kind of along the same lines as the parents, though. I mean, his parents seem like I'm guessing they just really didn't know what to do, so they were just kind of like, yeah, we're in over our heads. We can't help you. Sorry. Which
right,
is, I think, what a lot of people, how a lot of people at least feel when maybe they're a friend or a sibling or, cousin, whoever, coworker, confides in them about some things like this. It's like, shoot, man, I don't know how to handle this. But
yeah,
I'm just wondering, like when you said, and I'm going backwards a little bit in your story, but when you said that the pastor was like, if you guys don't give your lives fully to God, XYZ, then you're going to get divorced. I'm just wondering if at any point in time he described what that is supposed to look like, because I don't know, I just see like a lot of blanket statements like that sound really good.
yes,
And I know people, I think that it's understandable for people like the parents, like friends, like people that you're telling this to that don't really know how to deal with it, to
right,
say some kind of nice blanket statement like that. Well, you guys need to trust God more. You guys need to give your lives fully to God. You guys need to, X, Y, and Z, like blanket, very general statement is probably the most that a lot of people can do. But for the pastor who should know at least a little bit better of how to give you the steps. Like, okay, what does that
mm-hmm,
look like
right,
exactly in our
yeah,
situation? Not generally, but like in our
right,
situation, what does that look like, when she does X, Y, and Z, or when he does X, Y, and Z, then how am what does giving my life completely to God, and how does that flesh out? What does that look like in that situation? You know?
right,
I feel like those
yeah.
kind of talks would be helpful.
They would
And so
be,
did
and
he give you any of those?
Not to my recollection, because I am a person who, when I get confused about something or I need help, I want practical examples, or practical steps that I can take. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? And so talking to him and talking to a lot of people in the church, it was a lot of blanket statements like, just trust God, read your Bible, read Proverbs, gotta be a Proverbs 31 woman. I'm like, okay, so just pray more. But what do I do when he says X, Y, and Z to me? Do I just keep my mouth shut and start praying? Like, what do I do? And nobody really gave me any steps like that.
Yeah.
John.
And that's like, so in my mind, there's a moral dilemma here now. Because when it makes sense where, like, if an abuser makes threats like, I'm going to key your car if you do this again, and he never keys your car, so it loses its value the next time he's like, I'm going to key your car if you do this again. And you're like, no, you're not, but in your mind, you're thinking, no, you're not, because you've made false threats
Right.
like this before. The moral
Right.
dilemma, I think, comes in when self-harm comes into the play, because you almost, the moral dilemma is for a victim. Some victims may take the platform of, well, if he hurts himself or if he goes and, ends his life, my life gets better. Like, they have those thoughts, right? They'll never say that, but that they have those
Right.
thoughts. So the moral dilemma is, like, as they make those threats, morally, do you be like, okay, whatever, do you, I'll do me? Or do you take every one of those self-harm threats seriously and act upon them? Because you never know, even though they're using it, most of the time they're using it as a tool of coercion and manipulation.
Yeah.
You'll never know in your mind, like, you'll never be able to, I think, verify, like, is this a tool he's using, or is he actually serious about potentially self-harming himself? And how should I handle that as being a good moral human being? Like, that's the moral dilemma I see. And that's why I think the tool in his tactic, if he was using it as a tool of coercion, it's a very good tool in the toolbox to use, because if you're a moral human being, you're going to take that seriously and come under his control, because you're afraid he might actually do something. So it's a moral conundrum. So I was just kind of like, I was kind of thinking about that as you're talking. I'm like, man, like,
Yeah.
what would I
Yeah.
do? Like, if I were in your shoes, my personality is different. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, you do you, brother. I mean, I'll just live my life. But on the other side, I understand that, like, I try to be a good moral human being. So obviously, I think you did the right thing. I think by
Yeah.
contacting other people to step in shows that,
Right.
I think that might actually negate that tactic, because he knows
Yeah.
now, if he does that, if he's using it as a tool and he tells you, like, I'm going to self-harm if you keep doing this or whatever, he knows that you're going to call somebody else, whether he
Yes.
gets mad at you or not. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good diffusion tool for that. So for those that are listening who might have that specific scenario where your abuser maybe says statements like self-harm statements, I think instead of trying to handle it yourself, getting other people involved will show your abuser
100%.
that you're going to call somebody and you're going to try to get
Yeah.
them help, whether they like it or not. So then they're just going
Right.
to stop. If it's really a tool of manipulation, they'll stop. And if
Mhm.
it's not a tool of manipulation, well, now they're getting professional help. Because I think in your story, he started to open up a little bit to the
Yeah.
pastor. So, like,
Mhm.
I think you did the right thing there. Though that's
Yeah.
the comment I
Yeah.
want to make.
Yeah.
I would have to completely agree about it being like a coercion tool, manipulative
Yes.
thing, because, um, because it plays on your emotions, and, it doesn't even matter if you, at this point, kind of hate the person. Like, you love them as a person enough to not want them to harm themselves, much less, unalive themselves, which is, I know, a lot of times what they threaten. I have just like a little short, story about that in particular, but I did kind of the same thing you did, Steph. Um, you know, uh, Bill had been saying these kinds of things for months. And all of a sudden one day, and mind you, he had been like basically living on the couch. So, I come downstairs and he's there. And
Mhm.
one day he was nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. I could not find him anywhere. His vehicle was in the driveway. So I knew that he didn't drive somewhere. It was like 0 degrees or maybe 3 out. I mean, it was sub-zero Wisconsin
Mhm.
weather, and I'm thinking that he walked somewhere. Like,
Oh my
I was looking
gosh.
around the yard. I thought, "Shoot, man, maybe he went down." We lived by a lake that was in walking distance. I'm like, "Maybe he went down to the lake," but, like, his coat was there. There was nothing in the house telling me that if he did go for a walk that he was, being safe about it with the
Right.
sub-zero temperatures. I
Right.
got so scared because I couldn't find him and he wouldn't answer anybody's calls. I got his brother involved. I ended up we he or his brother or I either, ended up calling the police
Mhm.
because we didn't know what to do. We thought he wandered off somewhere in the frigid temperature and is probably dying somewhere.
Yeah.
And this was
Yeah.
all because of talk that he had been doing up to this point about, self-harm. And so half of me was calling his bluff and the other half of me was like, "Shoot, man, he might really be in trouble." And let me tell you, we did find him. He had climbed up into the attic of the garage and was just kind of chilling up there. I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I mean, you have everybody worried sick. And anyway,
Right.
he got really mad. He got really mad about that.
Of course.
Because, the police came. It was a big, well, police were at our house and all the neighbors are wondering what's going on. And, there were like 4 or 5 of them and, they drug me downstairs and they made me and talked to me about suicide. And it was really an embarrassing thing for him.
Right.
And I'm just like, you know what? Some things are more important than your ego.
Yes.
I can't, I just can't put your ego above, you set this stage.
Yeah.
So, they do get mad, but you know what? He stopped. That one scenario wasn't the like end of it, but he
Right.
didn't do it as much anymore after
Yeah.
that. And then after I called a pastor and got somebody else involved, basically did what you did almost.
Mhm.
Mine was through the phone though, like put it to his ear.
Yeah.
Um, that I think all of that combined kind of stopped that self-harm talk.
Right.
So it does kind of call their bluff. And you're right, John.
Yes.
You kind of protect yourself both ways. You can
Mhm.
hopefully it does stop calls their bluff and it stops the manipulation and the threats. But at the same time, if it's real, then there's other people involved who can help. So I think
Mhm.
that's key what you
Exactly.
said, John.
Right. Yeah. And there was actually another time where he said he was gonna harm himself. Was this after? I'm not sure if this was before or after that story. It doesn't really matter. But he had said to me on a different night that he was gonna harm himself, and he ended up um, like laying down in the bed. We had both been consuming alcohol. It was like a nightly thing for us. His medicine and my just problem. Well, they were problems for both of us. Anyways, I digress. Um, so we were drinking, and he ended up getting to a point in the night where he was being non-responsive. And I don't mean non-responsive in like he was unconscious or anything like that. I mean just like he was not responding to me. And in my drunken stupor, I was like, okay, so either you're planning on going through with this because you're not going to tell me about it, or you are like something like the alcohol is affecting like you and you need to go to the hospital. And he kept saying that he wanted to harm himself. So I told him, I was like, I'm going to call 911 if you don't respond to me. And so he continued to not respond to me. So I was like, okay. I called an ambulance, and as soon as he heard that I was on the phone, with 911, he immediately shot up and he was like, you need to get off the phone with them, blah, 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 blah. I walked out of the room and I was like, I need someone to come check out my husband. I just think he's had too much to drink and I just want to make sure he's okay. And so an ambulance came out and checked him out. He was so mad. They hooked him up to all these wires and stuff. His blood pressure was like, or his heart rate was like over 150. Like, he was super mad. They were like, buddy, we really want you to like come down to the hospital with us. And we just want to make sure that you're okay. Your heart rate is super elevated. And he was just barely responding to the EMTs and stuff like that. He was so mad. So that was a night where I did kind of call his bluff. I was like, okay, you can't say stuff like this to me and expect me to do nothing about it. So every time you say something like this, I will be calling an ambulance, and like, I don't care about the repercussions of that, which would basically just mean us getting into another 4-hour argument. But that was like a weekly basis thing.
Yeah, you're used to that by this
And
point.
I was just like, oh, so just another day, like no big deal. At least I'll get him to stop saying self-harming things and stuff. So, and I don't think he ever actually wanted to. I think it was a cry for attention kind of thing. But yeah, I just like, I don't like when people say that they're going to harm themselves in a way to manipulate others. It's like, oh, what's that saying? Not a silver bullet. I don't know. It's like one of those things that just like ends all conversations. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, now I have to be like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And stuff like that. And it ends everything when someone's like, well, I just don't want to be here anymore. So
Yeah.
that stopped that. I don't really remember him saying many more self-harm things after that. I think he was embarrassed about having the ambulance come out, and then embarrassed again when Kenny came out. So I don't really remember him doing any more of that stuff. But at this point in our relationship, we were just like on a downhill trajectory. And then so I remember saying that we moved back in once we found out I was pregnant with Ender. We moved back into his parents' house for a little bit, and that was rough, because not only were we still having our, 3 to 6 hour long conversations every other night, but now I was watching him do this to both his brother and sometimes his mom. Him and his mom would get into these really, really bad arguments, and it was mostly, from my perspective, it was mostly Jonah trying to like make his point and like force her to understand what he was saying, but she either wasn't understanding it or wasn't in the correct mind frame or headspace to be able to process what he was saying. Regardless, the conversation was not landing, and he was one of those people that would have to talk. He has to keep talking until you understand it. He's not going to stop talking. So what he would do, she would be done with the conversation, and literally she would be going around the house, just like dusting, cleaning, doing like busy work to get away from him. And he would follow her around the house, just like follow her up the stairs and still be talking to her, follow her into her bedroom and still be talking to her. And I would just be like waiting for it to end, because I know if I jumped in, we were going to have a long conversation, and I just didn't have the energy. I never had the
Yeah.
energy for those conversations. Like, I shut
Oh,
down
yeah.
so fast. So, so then, since we were living with his parents, I don't remember how or why, but he was no longer working for a period of time when I was pregnant with Ender. And I think it was like we moved back in his parents' house, I think August of 2015, August of 2015. And those few months that we were there before Ender was born were really rough because it was just added stress of two families living in the same household. And so everything was, it seemed to be getting on Jonah's nerves, and we were just having all kinds of talks, and it was not fun. I remember one time we had invited our friends Colin and Eden over for dinner, and I think we invited another couple too to have dinner at um, Jonah's parents' house where we were living. And so Jonah was, when this day came when we were all supposed to hang out, for whatever reason, Jonah was not in a good mood. He basically was just like, I'm not hanging out with them. You can do whatever you want. And I was like, okay, well, we invited them over to like make dinner and stuff. I can't just like not hang out with them. And when he said, you can do whatever you want, that meant I want you to stay up here with me and hang out with me. And they can just hang out with themselves downstairs. And I'm like,
which is ridiculous.
Yes.
It's an impossible situation.
It is. I was like, this is not okay. So when he said that, I was like, okay, well, I'll come in and like check on you and come in and like talk to you and stuff like that. Like I'll come up every once in a while and say stuff, but like I'm going to follow through with our plans. So I remember me and Eden were downstairs just prepping dinner, and I got a little bowl of some kind of food to bring up to Jonah. It was just like a little snack, like, hey, we're making this. Do you want to try it, kind of thing. I made this for you. So I walk up the stairs and I go to hand it to him, and he does not have a good reaction at all. He's basically like, why would you think that I would want you to bring me cold food or something like that? But he was just like, I was trying to do something nice, and he totally flipped it around on me and was like, why would you think that I would want this? And started arguing with me and being really mean to me, to the point where I'm getting teary-eyed and I'm trying to get out of the conversation so I can go back downstairs. Well, it's been like 15 minutes and he's still going at me. And I guess Colin had come up the stairs to come check on us. And Colin was just standing right outside of our room, listening to Jonah lay into me. And I was like, I'm so glad that somebody heard it, because I feel crazy.
Yeah.
I always just felt crazy. And so when I came out of the room, Colin was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, let's just not talk about it. Let's just go downstairs. And so we went downstairs and just like went along with the night as best we could and stuff like that. And I just told everyone that Jonah wasn't feeling good. It was always, whenever he didn't want to hang out, it was, Jonah's not feeling good. He's having a bad back day. And so, yeah, I said that a lot. And so we just like continued on with the night and whatnot. And it was not a good night. I couldn't even, like, after getting yelled at for 15 minutes when you're trying to do something nice for somebody, like, that completely just deflated me. And the whole night I was just putting on a smile and stuff like that, because I knew that when the night was over and after I was done cleaning up after everybody, I knew that I had to go back up those stairs, and I knew that I was going to get yelled at or taught or lectured.
You have to pay your debt.
Exactly. Yep. And so then the conversations obviously would flow into, why did you do that? You need to apologize. After I did apologize, then we would talk about why it took me so long to apologize.
Gosh. Let's analyze every single little thing and talk about it for an hour. And let me tell you how you're wrong in every single little minute point.
Exactly. So he never called me like stupid or idiot or anything like that. He knew those words bothered me from the relationship before. Right. So, but he just made me feel so stupid. Yep. Like, I felt like I was a child being lectured to for hours. Like, oh my gosh, how have I made it in life this far if I'm messing all of this stuff up that he's talking about?
Right.
So, it's crazy to talk about it now that it's, you know, it was years ago. Right. Yes. And you're like, how I can't, like, put today's Steph into past Steph, and you'd been like, okay, peace out, Cub Scout.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would have had a
But
completely different reaction.
it's easy when we start talking and telling stories of the past, be like, dude, what was I thinking back then?
Mhm.
But there are people out there that are in your past shoes feeling the exact same way that you were feeling with the 4-hour conversations and
Yes.
we're gonna leave our friends downstairs to entertain themselves while you and I are just gonna sit upstairs. It's like, like,
Yeah,
just cancel the night if you're gonna do that. Like, what the heck?
exactly.
So, you know, I don't know. It's almost, I don't want to say it's laughable to talk about it now, but now that you're out of you're out of that relationship and stuff, it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what were
Out
they
of
thinking?
yeah. What was I thinking? There were so many red flags, but like the way that abuse works is that it starts off and it's so subtle at first and it's just like, oh, that was just a little blurb. That was a little weird, but that's fine. And
Yeah.
it's slow. It's like a frog in slowly boiling water, right? You
Right.
just don't you're so conditioned to it and there's just little instances of boundary breaking here or there or bending your boundaries here until
Yeah.
you don't have any boundaries at all. Like I
Mhm.
was just like, as long as Jonah is happy, I am happy. So I was
Yeah, the world can
idolizing
go on.
him.
Yeah.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
idolizing him and I was idolizing our relationship. I was like, as long as he's happy, like we'll be fine. We'll get through this. And I always thought in the back of my head, we have God. We can get through anything with God.
Right.
It wasn't until later on that I was realizing like, okay, maybe this is not going to work.
Was it you? Well, okay, think back. Was it you idolizing him, or was it you wanted to make him happy so you would have a couple hours of peace?
Yeah. Yeah. That was mostly it. Um I yeah, maybe I mean I know there was some idolization there, probably more so in the beginning. Um, but definitely like at a certain point, I was just like, dear God, like I have to babysit his emotions just so I can have like an okay afternoon, where he's not mad at me for anything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I I kept that like we can still work this out. We can still work this out up until um after we had Ender for a little bit and then that's changed some things. We are now in January of 2016. This is when Ender is born. Okay. So Ender being born was it was an event because first of all, we lived in Pennsylvania and they were having this like massive snowstorm. And so I was scheduled to be induced on a Friday. It was either a Thursday or a Friday. The day doesn't matter. I was there for 5 days. I was scheduled to be induced and things just weren't progressing fast enough. And also this giant snowstorm everybody was stuck in the hospital. Like
Yeah.
I feel like we got like 3 feet. I might be misremembering that. But it was,
But it was a
but
lot. I remember that.
it, there was so much snow. Um, and so some of my family was stuck at the hospital with me. That was pretty cool. I'm so glad that at the time, I had my younger sisters there. I had a couple family members. Mindy was there. And um, it was just, it was nice to have, support and stuff
Yeah.
because Jonah is not fit for stressful situations like that. I
Yeah.
think I think I don't know. His condition, his Ehlers-Danlos condition was flaring up when I was at the hotel. So he was in a lot of pain, which meant he had to constantly take walks and go outside for smoke breaks and just like hang out and talk with his friends who were also there, like our mutual friends were there because we were all just stuck at the hospital. And so he was gone a lot. He didn't like leave me alone for like long periods of time. There was always somebody with me, but like I wanted him to be with me more, but I felt bad every time he would be like, "All right, babe, I'm going to go for a walk." I felt bad being like, "Can you just stay here?" You know? So, um yeah, he ended up um when I was attempting to push on like I think it was like the third or fourth day I had been there. I was exhausted and I was trying to push. He sat in the chair that was like up by my head, but like in the corner a little bit, so I couldn't see him next to me. I had to look back to actually be able to see him. He was sitting in that corner, um cheering me on, saying things like, "Go Steph, you can do it," and all that stuff. But I wanted him to be right there next to me so I could hold his hand and all of this stuff, and it just wasn't that. I had my sisters and my mother-in-law at the time all around me, like, holding my legs and, like, just, like, they were in it with me, and, and Jonah, I think it was just the stress of it. He was nervous that I was gonna die, um, because I had almost had like preeclampsia or something like that. So he was worried. He said that he was worried that I was going to die, so he just couldn't take all of the stress. And I had people around me, so it was okay. But that's another thing that I was like, man, I really wish that you could have been like right up there experiencing this with me, kind of deal. Um, but after Ender was born and stuff, we kind of went back into like a love bombing stage, like a honeymoon period where we were just so infatuated with our son that like all of our other problems just kind of took a like were put on the back burner for a little while. And so we were for a short period of time just being a happy little family. And if you think about it, we had a lot less stress because we were now living, well, we just had different stress. We were now living with his parents. His parents were buying food and we didn't have to pay rent or anything like that. So a lot of our monetary stresses were lessened when we were living there. And so that was a little bit of a honeymoon period we had. But then I remember I had been primarily getting up with Ender in the middle of the night, and I was still. I went back to work fairly fast afterwards, and so after I went back to work, I'm just like, hey, I need help with Ender in the middle of the night kind of thing, and so he said during the daytime, he said, yeah, no problem, just wake me up, and I was like, all right, cool, 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 cool. And so we had just discussed it and we went to bed that night and it was in the middle of the night and Ender starts crying and I reach over and I'm like, Jonah, hey, it's your turn. Um, and he freaked out on me. He's like, why did you wake me up? It takes me forever to fall back asleep. My back pain is so bad. I can't believe you're waking me up in the middle of the night kind of thing. Those are not his exact words, but that was like the gist of what he said to me. He was very upset and he was very sharp with me. And all I did, I was just like, I am so very sorry. I won't do that again. I got up, I ended up taking care of our son, and I never woke Jonah up again to help me. From that point on. And that was what, maybe like 6 weeks after he was born.
Wow. Steph, where's his job now in the timeline here? Does he have a job now or are you the only one working?
So I was the only one working up until I want to say it was the end of my pregnancy. I worked, I'm sorry, he had a job. Pause. He started working again towards the end of my pregnancy. I forget. I think this is maybe the remediation job that he got. I don't remember which job it was because he bounced back and forth between a couple because of his Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So he was working at the time that I asked him, like we were both working when I asked him to help me with Ender in the middle of the night. That would have been crazy if he wasn't working and he refused to help me. He definitely does not remember that conversation at all. It was the middle of the night and stuff, and I guess I could have talked to him about it another time, but I was like, it's not worth it. I'm not even. So I stopped. I feel like this was the beginning of the end. I started to not talk to him about things anymore because I was already like, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know he's going to get into this. And it just wasn't worth it to me
Yeah.
to have a conversation and try to fix it because I knew I was going to get reamed out for hours on end.
Yeah. You weigh the risks, and at this point,
Yes,
you know that it's not worth it. It really isn't, because even
right,
at this point, you couldn't do anything right.
right.
You kind of exhaust all your options for how to do
Mhm.
this right. Maybe I'll go to
Right,
option B and C and D of how to do it right.
right.
And when you're at the end of that, it's like, uh, I might as well just stop trying because there is no point.
Yeah, yeah. So I started to not just not talk to him about things. And so we lived at his parents until Ender was 1. So we stayed there for a full year after he was born. And that's just like, and then we almost didn't move in with each other after it was time to leave his parents' house. So this would have been 2017. So Ender is 1 years old, and I was still nannying at the time, and something had happened that made me scared that the type of abuse that was happening, it I feared it was gonna turn physical, so something happened, right? So,
Steph, I
um
think there was something, it was more like some things, because I
yeah,
remember I remember that time period, and you would call me often and be like, this is what's going on, and every time it seemed like it was worse. And I do remember around this time that you guys were moving or talking about moving out of his parents'
mhm,
house, that you told me you guys got into a fight and he threw something like a TV or a VCR or some like device at you.
yeah, right,
Didn't hit you, you didn't get hurt, but you were like, what? Oh my, like, what would have happened, Jen, if that would have hit me? And is he going to keep doing this?
right,
And then with the whole in and out of jobs, I remember, we talked about that too. And
mhm,
I think it was the summation of all of it. At that point, it was
yeah,
like you could see this progression. And, you know, I mean, just logic can say
mhm,
A plus B at some point is going to equal C.
right,
And
yeah,
I think that's where you were at.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it was definitely a combination of things. Things were just getting stacked on top of each other, so it was kind of like death by a thousand cuts kind of thing, and all of these things adding up, I'm just like I came to a point where I was like, "Okay, full stop. I need to do something. We need to do something different." So we were set to plan to move to our new apartment, and I think it was maybe like we were supposed to sign the lease papers maybe in like a week. And um and then one day we were driving somewhere. I don't know if it doesn't matter where it was. We were driving somewhere and we were in an argument about something, and I was driving. Jonah was in the passenger seat, and Ender, who was brand new, was in the back, in his car seat. And so we're driving, and he starts being really mean to me. So I grab my phone. I have it in my left hand while I'm driving, and I go to hit the record button to record what he's saying, because oftentimes he would tell me, that never happened. I never said that. You're misremembering that. And so I started to feel crazy. So I was like, I'm freaking recording this so I don't forget. So he saw me reach for my phone, and he, while we're driving, reaches over me, over the steering wheel, and goes to grab my phone out of my hand. And when he does that, I jerk the steering wheel, and we almost went off the road. And so, like, we went off a little bit, but like I veered it back on really quickly. And then I screamed like as loud as I could. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, Ender is in the back seat. Like, what are you doing? And he took my scream and went way louder. This is the loudest, scariest, screamy voice that I have ever heard come out of him. Like, it was like evil just took over his body, and he screamed at me. And at that point, I just started crying. I put my hands right back on the windshield, or on the driver's wheel, and I just kept saying, I'm sorry. I'm like, this is not okay. Something needs to change. Like, I can't do this anymore. And at that, because of that happening, because of Ender being in the back seat, I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to continue on with this crap even when Ender is here. I don't know why I was like, a baby will change everything. A baby certainly does change everything, just not the way that you think it's going to. So we were getting ready to move into this place, and I talked to my friend Eden, and I was like, this is what just happened. I'm nervous that this is going to turn into physical abuse. If he is willing and able to just reach over while somebody's driving with his brand new baby in the back seat just to stop someone from recording him, there's like, we have a big issue. I don't want to move in with him anymore. What am I supposed to do? And she's like, we will call people from church. We will find a place for you to stay, and we will find a place for Jonah to stay. She's like, I agree with you. I don't think you guys should, like, I'm not saying like divorce or anything like that. She's like, but I think it is safe for you guys to be separate. Like, you need to be separate to be safe. So I told Jonah later that day, I was like, I'm not signing this lease with you. And he broke down crying. He was like, I'm so sorry. Like, he just went into I'm apologizing for everything. And I'm like, still, I'm scared. I'm scared of you. We need to be separate, like living separate for a little bit. So he ended up moving in with some of his friends from church, and I ended up moving in with the family that I was nannying for in their basement because they had a finished basement. Go ahead, John.
The emotional mood swings that I have heard throughout this story.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make an analogy comparison because I'll get in trouble, but I'm just saying the emotional mood swings are crazy.
It was, yes, there was a lot. He is never, I mean,
I feel like it's very familiar though. Wouldn't you say, John?
Yeah, for sure. Like going
Yeah.
back to your story, with Bill, yes, the emotional mood swings were crazy. And now listening to Steph's side, because you got to remember, like, I don't think I had any clue at that time what was going on.
Right.
Like with you and Jonah, I don't know where we were. I was just doing my own thing, living my own life. Right. So I had no idea there was issues, problems, or anything like that. So for some of this is the first time I'm actually hearing this story in detail and just making the comparison to my own experience with Jen and Bill. Like, I'm starting to see a pattern develop with these two specific
people.
These types of people, these types of abusers that go from like 110 down to like negative 110, and that swing is very rapid, very fast. And I'm like, okay, so maybe I can calculate that as a warning sign. I guess I could throw that out there to anybody, that if your significant other or abuser or whatever, if they have those really drastic swings of emotion, going from really hot to really cold. Like,
Yes.
I don't know what if it's a tactic or if it's a mental health thing. I don't know what causes that. But it is a pattern with at least these two different relationships that I've noticed. So I'm curious to see or hear from a professional what they think that is, unless either of you know what
Right.
that is.
Yeah, I don't know. I just call it the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde tactic.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's not the correct term.
Well, yeah, I mean, to us, that's very correct. But I
Mhm,
think
yep.
it is a sign of a mental health problem. I know people that struggle with like forms of bipolar disorder. That's exactly what happens. It's called being manic, and they're
Yeah.
really high, and these aren't always like in the same day or the same talk. Sometimes it's like a period of really high and then a period of really low. That's how it
Mhm.
was. That's how at least it started out, with Bill. And then that got more and more kind of crazy, to where it was
Mhm.
like almost layers of that happening at
Right.
different intervals and things. And I think that's what was happening with Jonah. And I feel like multiple things can bring that on. And even if
Right.
somebody isn't, I mean, I'll be curious to talk to some of our professional guests later on down the road about this and get their take on it. But I feel like even if it's not an actual mental health like diagnosis, like I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder or
Mhm.
whatever else thing causes that. It's a manic uh, like state, regardless of
Mhm.
if there's real mental health issues or not. This
Right.
is the framework that we have to describe it in, and this is what it's like. So,
Mhm.
I think for anybody experiencing this that doesn't have kind of that vocabulary framework to put things in, I think it's helpful to be able to at
Mhm.
least, you know, say when you're talking to people, when you're trying to explain what's going on, you know, you don't have to say that my husband, wife, brother, you know, mom, dad, whatever is, mentally unstable or bipolar, but you can say, these extreme highs and lows. It's like
Mhm.
manic, a manic state
Right.
in with that comes with those disorders. So
Yeah. Yeah, bipolar disorder and another one, borderline personality disorder. Whoo! Um, Chad Chad had one of his therapists say, "I think you may have borderline personality disorder," and then Chad stopped seeing that therapist. So, it's like,
Well,
that's
yeah.
another one.
Chad is a
I
different
We don't.
person.
Yeah, we don't. We're not at Chad yet.
We'll hear
Oh,
all
yeah,
about that, I'm sure.
we haven't gotten to Chad yet, you're
We
right, so
haven't
sorry
gotten to
about
Chad
that.
yet. So,
Yeah,
but
we'll get
for
there.
now, you're now living separately. You're living with your people that you're
My
nannying for
Mhm.
in their basement that's finished, kind of like a separate apartment, stuff like that.
Right,
How long
right.
did that go on for?
That went on for a couple of months until I was like, I said, I can't do this anymore. I felt so like out of, like taken out of my comfort zone. And so I was living with people who I mean, like I was comfortable with them, but like they weren't my family, And it was 45 minutes away from Jonah's parents' house, which is what that was like my home base. And it was farther away from church and everything. I couldn't stand it. And I needed help with Ender. I couldn't do it by myself anymore. I just needed help to nanny kids for 40 hours a week. And then right after that, taking care of your own child. Um, Albeit he was right. I just had one child and he was not a hard baby at all. But at the time, I thought it was very difficult. So we ended up after a couple of months of him living, he lived with our old roommates that we lived in what I call the tree house. So our first apartment, he lived with our old roommates while I was living with the people that I nannied for. And he was basically just like having a party the whole time. So at where he was, they would drink and hang out by the bonfire and just talk every night. And they were also his bandmates because he was in a band with them. And they would just play music all the time. So while I'm here, I'm taking care of our child all by myself, going to work and doing all these things. He basically just got to hang out with his buddies and have like a couple months long party, band practice, whatever. So he was having so much fun.
When was he seeing Ender or being a dad?
Well, I would come over on the weekends. I would come home, or sometimes during the week if I got done work early enough, I would drive back to his parents' house and visit for a little bit. But pretty much it was just I was a single married person.
Mom. Yeah.
Single married mom, yeah. It was primarily just me taking care of Ender, and that's how it stayed. So after that, we ended up, I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. And I said, all right, let's just sign this lease. Let's just try. Okay. So this only lasted a couple of months. We ended up getting a lease, moving into our new apartment. And it just kept going downhill from there. So we get our own apartment. We are back to having normal, typical everyday stresses. Like now we're on our own. Our rent at the time was just like it was astronomical to me. It would be considered cheap rent now. But we were struggling to pay our rent pretty like fast out the gate. We were struggling to pay rent, and we were paying it late. And then there was like a $275 some stupid late fee that we had to pay. Like if you pay your rent after this date, it's like a couple $100 extra or whatever. So we were doing that. And from all the money that we were spending on his supplements and his like self-medication for his Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and alcohol, between those two things, there's no way that we would have been able to sustain our bills. And at this point, I am almost checked out of the relationship entirely, because I'm like, we're 100% on our own now. And this is a mess. This is a complete mess. And so we just kind of slipped into this like running parallel to each other, or like coasting in life, where we weren't really doing life together. We were just kind of doing our own thing alongside of each other. So this is when he really got into he wanted to work on his band. And so one night he comes home and he tells me, very matter of fact, the band comes before everything else, and I am going to make sure I'm having band practice at least 3 to 4 nights per week every week. And I took that as, Steph, you're basically going to take care of our son all by yourself. And when he said
that's how
that,
I would hear that.
Yes. And I was like, what about spending time with your family? And he's like, nope, this is the only thing that matters right now. God wants me. I know. It was
It's
God
the mission
wants me.
from God.
Yeah, the mission from God.
Why does
God gave me these talents, and I have to use my talents, this is for God. And I'm just like, I don't think God wants you to basically abandon your family, but I didn't say that, but okay.
Yeah, because what really can you say when they pull the "God wants me to do this" card? It's like,
know.
You don't have any argument against that. How can you argue against that? Because anything you say, even if it's, hey, when are you going to spend time with your family? It even feels to yourself. It feels selfish. And you're like, how am I going to take away from God and the mission that He gave you? So it's like you either determine in your heart to suck it up and jump on the bandwagon with that and support in any way you can, or, you're kicking against the goads, so to speak.
Exactly. So I
Well,
didn't want to be going against God. Go ahead, John.
well, it's it's I don't know if it's related to like the pattern of behavior of abuse and stuff like that, what we're specifically talking about with the band and all that. But I will say that like as a father myself, and when Addison was born, and before kids, we all had our lives that we were leading. I had my hobbies, I did my things, I
Mm-hmm.
did all kinds of stuff that that mattered to me, that were important to me. So I was into a
Right.
bunch of different hobbies and stuff. Well, then comes Addison, right? Or kids in general, and
Right.
it
Right.
completely changes your life. Like, yes, you have this now human being that's dependent on you to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And from a dad perspective, I'm like, well, in my mind back then, it's like, well, I can still do what I want to do because mom's going to be there to make sure that the child is alive.
Right.
And so it's this like cycle that I think maybe that men go through, maybe. This is not confirmed. This is just a theory I have that, when their first child comes into the world, it's a complete paradigm shift to, going from you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, because
Mm-hmm.
you have no responsibility other than your partner or your
Right.
significant other, who's also an adult and,
Right.
may or may not have their hobbies and things that they're into. But for the most part, even if you're married without kids, there's not a huge I say this carefully, it's not like a huge life shift when it comes to like the things you're into, hobbies, passions, things like that.
Right.
And then when kids come into the picture, you like, at least in my brain, you like fight. The men try to fight to keep, they want to do all of it. They want to be a dad.
Yeah.
They want to be a spouse. They want to go to band practice. They want to play video games. Like they want to keep
Mm-hmm.
doing the things that they enjoy doing. And they struggle with making the transition from, okay, we're not teenagers anymore and video games are cool. I still play them to this day, but I can't
Mm-hmm.
spend, you know, 25 hours a week playing video games. I can maybe only spend 4 hours a week playing video
Right.
games. Once a week on a Friday night with my buddies, we go play Call of
Right.
Duty or something.
Right.
There's this struggle that internally happens that says, I want to hold on to as much of my passions as possible, even though I have a child involved.
Yeah.
And the more mature adult kind of gets over that faster, and the
Mm-hmm.
less mature individual holds on to that as long as possible and is willing to sacrifice more important things. As you just mentioned, he said that band is the most important thing,
Right.
which should anybody who's listening or watching this should be like, yeah, that's not that's not the right mentality to
Oh, red
have.
flag
Red flag. Like, okay,
for
at
sure.
least even if you're not a believers and you're not Christians and God comes first, even if you're just a normal human being, it should be like, okay, if God doesn't come first in your life because you don't believe in God, okay, well, your family should be right up there as like second,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe your passions and your spouse third, and then your like all
Mm-hmm.
your passions and your hobbies and stuff maybe come after that. But to
Right.
say like, to sit there and say my band comes first
Mm-hmm.
is the most immature thing that I hear that somebody, a new dad, can say. My life is
Yeah.
more important than your life, and my life is more important than my child's life. That to me
Yeah.
is like, okay, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he realized what I don't think he realized what he was saying, or maybe he did. He said a lot of like jaw-dropping things like that. I'm like, did those words actually just leave your mouth? Like, you can't say stuff like that even if you're feeling a certain way. Like, there are certain things that you just don't say, and one of them is band practice comes before my wife and my child. Like, nope. That After that conversation, and then he followed through with it. He went to band practice 3 or 4 times a night. So what our schedule would look like is I would get home from work around, let's see, I worked until like 4:30, and it was a little bit of a drive. So I would get home around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then he would immediately leave for band practice, and he'd be gone until I went to bed that night, because band practice was between well, sometimes 2, but mostly 3 to 4 hours every single night, because it wasn't just band practice, like playing music the whole time. They had to have their creative, like, hangout too, where they would just sit around the bonfire, smoke and drink, and just talk about God and talk about music and just have a blast. So he got to have all of this fun with his buddies multiple times a week, and I was a brand new mom all by myself in an apartment in, Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Like, I didn't have anybody close by. So to me, it was just a combination of all the things, and then him basically saying that we are not a priority. I started to think about divorce at that point. And it was because I know it took me a while, and because I refused. I was like, no, we can work through anything. We have God, we can work through anything. I finally started to think, like, I can't allow Ender to be raised in a home where he thinks it's okay to talk to another person like this, let alone like his wife. Like, I'm trying to raise Ender to be a good man, and I will not have him turn out like some of the bad behaviors of his father. Um, and so it got put in my head then, and this is where we start to transition. Um the it's the end, the demise of Jonah and I, and then we transition into how Chad and I got started up again. Who, yes, Chad, I'll have to introduce and all of that stuff. But so yeah, the relationship just went super downhill from there. We were barely talking. We would talk about, like, practical things, like if Ender had a doctor's appointment or whatever, but we weren't really talking that much, because he was always gone at band practice. And during this time, I had reached out to um my old friend Chad. And I think we talked about him a little bit before on the other episode, because we briefly dated
Yeah,
then
we
in
did.
Michigan,
We did, because
Wisconsin.
we talked through your little trip to Florida and how I went
Yes.
down to get you. So Chad
Yeah.
was introduced in earlier in this talk. Chad was
Yeah.
introduced as a fling that you called him, and you're like, would you move to Florida with me? And he's like, yeah, I'd move to Florida with you. And you
Yeah.
guys just took a road trip, and then I came and got you. And I'm like, nope, this is dumb. You're coming back with me. We left Chad in Florida.
Y-
I gave him a little bit of money and
Yeah.
said, you go do you. You go do you. I'm taking my sister. So,
Yeah.
but now it seems like up to this point in your story, this is now where, like, things start to kind of merge,
Yes.
where things are going downhill with Jonah, and you moved on, or you're consoling or confiding in your old friend
That's
Chad.
what I Yes, that's what I
And
did.
yeah, and then, like, as I'm sure there's going to be some more kind of merging stories here, because I have some questions about, like, okay, while you were talking with Chad, what was going on with Jonah, and when did you guys decide, or was it even decided y'all were just done? And then, did a divorce happen right away? Did it not happen right away?
Mhm.
Were you married but still dating? Like, I have all those questions, but I think for now we're going to save that for part 2 of this talk, which we're going to get into, like, literally right after this. We'll get into part 2. So, but for now, we're going to close out part 1 and call it a day there. And we'll pick up in part 2 here shortly. So for those of you watching, listening, this has been part 1 of, we don't know how many parts this story is going to be, but this is going to be part one, Steph's story. We're going to bring this to a wrap. If you're out there and any of this part of her story has resonated with you, maybe you have been in similar situations, similar relationships, or, you know, just something just hits you at your core, like, yep, I know exactly what she's feeling. Go ahead and throw a comment below. And if you want to be so bold and you maybe want to be a guest on the podcast to maybe tell your story, we're so happy to talk to you. Just go ahead and drop a comment, and then we'll reach out via DM on whatever platform you're watching this on. But for now, guys, that's going to wrap it for us. Thank you guys for sticking with us for that. This has been the Fortified Podcast, and we will see you on the next one. See ya.